Mr. Daniels, can you give us an assessment of where you are right now as far as come Sunday?
It's up to the doctors, not my decision.
For you, I mean, where do you think you're at? And
I feel good.
That was Chick Hernandez, it sounded like, with Jayden Daniels yesterday. Jayden wasn't talking much, although there were a couple of things he said that could have been clues to what will happen on Sunday. A busy Thursday show for us today. It'll start with our good friend Mark Zuckerman from Mass and Sports at 10:35. Mark will jump on and tell us about the new Nats hire, 35-year-old from Boston to become the new president of baseball ops. By the way, baseball really getting exciting down the stretch. Cleveland has now overcome and taken the lead in the American League Central. If you're not paying attention to it, the Guardians, were 15 and a half games back on July 8th behind Detroit. They were 10 and a half back on September 1st. They've won 17 of 19. They're in first place. Cal Raleigh hit home runs 59 and 60 last night. Big-time division races and wild card races coming down to the final regular season weekend in baseball. We'll have October playoff baseball next week. Looking forward to that. By the way, today for our football team, Cliff Kingsbury will speak before practice, Joe Witt Jr. As well. And then we'll find out, when they practice, if Jayden is limited again, full, or something else. We'll also learn more, I would assume, about Terry's situation. Denton's going to jump on with us at this morning. He'll do it at 11 to talk about what is truly one of the better college football football weekends, Saturdays in recent memory. Charch will be with us at 11:25. Brian Diardo from CBSSports.com will jump on with us at noon to talk NFL, maybe a little Ryder Cup as well. So, yeah, yesterday was... You didn't get much, from Quinn first and then Jayden second. Jayden's press conference lasted 4 minutes and 44 seconds. Every single answer, with the exception of 3 of them, were, 7 words or less. Up to the doctors, not my decision. I feel good was another answer. No was another answer. Something to get used to, another answer. Nah, I'm myself, another answer. He looked a bit, and I watched it, he looked a bit, irritated. Jayden's not super comfortable, and you can tell he doesn't enjoy this part of the job, which I kind of like about him. There were a couple of things that he said, though, that I just wanted to talk through, Max. We don't even have to play it, because I think you needed to watch the answer as much as hear it. He was asked, I'm pretty sure by Keim, about whether or not he can run and cut. How much running and cutting has he been able to do? And he perked up a bit and he said, enough to feel good if I play on Sunday. And then he said, but it's not my decision. It's the doctor's decision. And then he was asked about wearing a knee brace. He said he's never worn one before. He has been wearing one reportedly since the Green Bay game. He said it would be something he would have to get used to. And then when he was asked whether he would have to wear a knee brace if he ends up playing on Sunday in Atlanta, he said, quote, the doctors haven't made that decision yet, so that would be a conversation, closed quote. That answer, just if we're looking for clues about Sunday, I think that conversation may have already taken place if there was a good chance that he was going to play on Sunday about the brace. Doctors haven't made that decision yet. That would be a conversation. Maybe not. Maybe it would happen later on in the week after he had practiced with the knee brace. We know he was limited yesterday. We don't really know what that means in terms of how much he took in terms of first team reps, etc. That question did not come up in the presser with him. But I think, and of course, we're 2.5 hours away from perhaps looking silly, not we, but me. I think he's not playing Sunday. I think if he were playing Sunday, he would have been a full go yesterday. Now, if he's a full go today, or if he's limited today, full go Friday, that obviously will mean he's in. If he gets that full participant, of course, Friday, it's not what level of practice. You then get your status as to whether or not you're in, questionable, or out. My gut right now is that he's not going to play Sunday in Atlanta, and they're going to give it one more week. Of course, if he doesn't go in Atlanta, we'll have a lot of questions as to what this injury, not that the questions haven't been there already, but at that point, it's like, okay, when this happened, it was probably a 2 to 4 week injury, somewhere in that range, and we're now just figuring that out, that's exactly what it was. I hope he plays. I do. I think this is going to be a tough game Sunday in Atlanta. But my hunch is he won't play. And I feel the same way about Terry as well. I think Terry more likely is going to be out. By the way, there was a surprise on the injury report when it came out yesterday. Bill was on it with a knee. Now, some of the reporting is that they don't think that's a serious injury with Bill Krosky-Merritt. So hopefully he will be able to go on Sunday as well. This from Otter. Thank you, Otter. Animal House Otter. Why didn't you mention London Fletcher or Brian Mitchell when you were talking about the Hall of Fame list? Yeah, my bad yesterday. I didn't see the whole list. I saw the headline that said Breeze and Larry Fitzgerald named to the, nominated for Pro Football Hall of Fame class of 2026. And what struck me when I saw those two as eligible, they're in. Like, to me, they are no-brainers. When you think as a football fan, like, Hall of Famers, those two are immediate Hall of Famers. The debatables from last year, Eli and Phillip Rivers, they did not get in. I still think both will get in, and I think both did. I actually think Rivers deserves it more. But I think eventually both will get in. Well, Drew Brees is in the conversation of top 15 QBs, worst case top 20 of all time. He's in. Larry Fitzgerald is probably up there in the top 5, worst case top 7 or 8 wide receivers of all time. I don't even know where Larry Fitzgerald's numbers are. I should check those. But he's got to be way up there on all of the pass reception.
Larry has
lists.
More career tackles than drop passes. Did you know that stat?
Yeah, I've heard that before. Yes, I've actually heard that. Larry Fitzgerald on the all-time pass reception list. Where is he? Number 2. Number 2 in yards. Okay, receiving yards. Receptions, he is number 2. He's number 2 behind Jerry Rice in both receptions and yardage. So, yeah, he's an absolute lock. Where is he on the touchdown list? It's got to be
6th.
He's 6th on the touchdown list. It's Rice, Moss. Yeah, like, I think when you think about receivers, you think about Jerry Rice 1. I think it's the one position, and I've talked about this before, when you're debating the greatest at a position in the history of the game, it's the one position more than any other that gets no debate. Like, Jerry Rice is the greatest wide receiver in the history of the game. And if you're an NFL fan, you can't find more than a few to dispute you. Whereas every other position, even quarterback, with Brady's kind of GOAT status, you'll get debate at quarterback. But after Rice, it's like, it's Moss, it's Fitzgerald. I think Randy Moss, in terms of talent, would probably be number 2 on that list for me. But Larry Fitzgerald's up there. The receptions list, where's Moss on the reception list? Because he had kind of Moss is 18th on the reception list, which speaks to kind of the greatness. Larry Fitzgerald, number 2. T.O. would be in the conversation. Yeah. Those two jumped out. It's like, that's the first time we've had something where it's been so obvious that they're getting in. But Otter, yes, London Fletcher and Brian Mitchell on the 128 modern era players nomination list for the Pro Football Hall of Fame class of 2026. To me, Jake is he's no longer modern era. Jake is the big missing piece from Canton for our franchise's history. You could certainly debate guys like Larry Brown and Brian Mitchell and Gary Clark. Gary Clark's resume actually really stacks up well with some receivers that are in the Hall of Fame. I think if he plays his entire career in the NFL instead of combo USFL and NFL, I think Gary Clark is in the Hall of Fame had he played his entire career in the NFL. I don't think, as much as Brian Mitchell's actually, I think he knows the way I feel about him. He's actually one of my all-time favorite players because I think he's one of the all-time clutch players in franchise history, but I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. I think he's worthy of the conversation, as he has gotten many times. I don't think he'll ever get there. He and Cribbs are the two returners on the list. And even though you can compare favorably London Fletcher's career to some linebackers, middle linebackers who are in the Hall of Fame, I don't think London will make it there either. I mean, an all-time Iron Man for our franchise and a great player. Was he the best middle linebacker of the era? No, Ray Lewis was. But I think both are absolutely year in and year out worthy of being on these lists and being narrowed down to, the final 50 list or even the final 25 list. I think Jake's the one that has the best case and has had the best case to be in the Hall of Fame, and he's not there. And he would be at the top of my list for players in the history of the franchise that are not in the Hall of Fame that should be. But once again, for Brian and for London, congrats. And we are rooting for you. And I did not mean to omit them from the conversation yesterday. I just saw the headline on Breeze and on Larry Fitzgerald. All right. So wanted to read this because I think it sets up an interesting, just brief conversation. And it's not actually one of those in which it's reality. It's very much a hypothetical, but it comes from Dave. Dave writes, "Hi, Kevin. It seems like Jayden is trending towards playing while Terry might miss this week." I don't know if Jayden's trending towards playing, but obviously at this point, because he was limited yesterday and he was out last week, there's a better chance. Dave continues, "For just this week, do you think the team is more likely to win with Jayden playing and Terry out, or how we had it last week with Mariota and Terry in? I think there's a strong case that Terry is more irreplaceable right now for this offense. I think Jayden is by far the most valuable player on our team, but I feel a little bit more nervous about the offense this week than I did last week." That's a would you rather for us, Max. Would you rather Mariota Terry or Jayden no Terry this week? Again, that's not reality because I think Terry's going to be out. So I don't think we've got that option. But it is interesting to consider. My answer is immediately, oh, no. Like, this isn't that hard. Jayden, 100%. You got to have him, especially a road game against a team that has the ability to play well and will be chomping at the bit to get back out there after being embarrassed last week in Charlotte against the Panthers. I said this yesterday. I think this is going to be a bit of a snake pit that they go into in terms of the opponent, not necessarily the crowd. The Atlanta crowd's okay. You know what? In Atlanta, there are always a lot of Washington fans anyway because of the network of Washington fans that went far south for so long, and the number of people that grew up Redskin fans in that part of the country, the Southeast. But I think you're going to get an absolute jacked up, ready to play Falcon team. And they've got players. They've got very good skill position players. They've got a good offensive line. They've got a better defense than they had last year. Their quarterback right now is the shaky, player on their roster. But give me Jayden in a game like that. And I'll be, I'd rather do that without Terry. Terry. Of course, the issue here is it's not just no Terry. It may be no Terry, no Noah Brown, no John Bates on offense. And that's problematic overall. Terry will be missed. Okay. Someone else sent me an email, and I'm looking for it right now, that just said, why all the fuss about Terry? Didn't you tell us that the team's win total wouldn't change without him? First of all, I didn't say that. I said it would change very little. But I also said that they can't win the Super Bowl or contend for the Super Bowl without Terry. They need Terry. He's their best receiver. But you are right. I minimized, very much so, the loss of a receiver like Terry to the overall season win total. It would be about a game. I think I said max 2 games, and maybe none. But that's also from the perspective of how the odds makers would put it out there. The over-under with Terry getting injured or being a holdout or not playing would not have changed at all heading into this season. Quarterbacks change that number. A dominant defensive player changes that number. Occasionally, another skill position player on offense will impact that. But we're talking about the Saquon Barkleys and the Jamar Chases of the world, not, Terry. But, of course, they're going to miss him. But back to the would you rather. I would rather have Jayden out there at 100% on Sunday. I would. I think this will be a much tougher game for whomever is playing quarterback than Sunday was. Sunday was a get-right scenario. It was the perfect setup for all of the reasons we talked about last week. Washington well-rested, Raiders not well-rested, Raiders not a really good football team overall, major issues along their offensive line, traveling west to east for a 1 o'clock kick, all of those reasons. This one is not that setup. This is a better football team, a hungry and desperate football team playing at home against a team right now that is wounded in a lot of areas. So give me the most valuable player in the franchise at the most important position on the field. That would be what I would rather have play out if that were an actual choice, which it isn't. But for, sports talk, hypothetical purposes, Max, which of the two would you choose?
It's tough for me just because the more that I think about it, it's not that tough. Because when you look at how the Falcons played us last year, what did Terry do in that game, Kevin? Didn't he have 1 catch for like 4 yards? So
was that what it was? I don't even remember.
I believe so. I know it was less than 10. That's for damn sure.
Look, him being on the field, though, is impactful
for
versus
sure.
Not being on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. It draws eyes and all that. But at the same time, Jayden offers so much more of a dynamic skill set than Terry at such a paramount position that we have to go into this game with Jayden and no Terry if we had that option. So that I would be picking Jayden and riding with my guy.
Wow. I didn't remember it this way. What I remember about that game, okay, they clinched the postseason, a playoff berth. Sunday Night Football, the game got, flexed to Sunday night. It was Michael Penix Jr.'s first legitimate start. He had played the week before against the Giants, who were horrible. And Jayden basically in that fourth quarter, second half, and overtime strapped the team to his back. I just pulled up the box score. I should go look at my notes to see what I said about Terry because I don't remember offhand. Jayden was 24 of 36 for 227 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick, but rushed for 127 yards on 16 carries. We remember that overtime drive. Terry, 1 catch on 7 targets. Did he have a bunch of drops that night? It's not like he didn't get targeted. Why did he only have 1 catch on 7? He got targeted more than anybody except for Zacchaeus.
He was getting bracketed. That I do know. Like they had Bates over the top, and then they had AJ Terrell basically sticking with Terry pretty much the entire game. So he was just in hell, apparently.
Really?
From what I remember, that's how I recall it. Because I remember Bates would be following him around up top, and then Terrell was moving to whichever side of the field that Terry was on. They were like, Terry is not going to be the one to beat us. Make Jayden do it. And he did it, credit to his credit.
Yeah. 7 targets, 1 catch, 5 yards. Interesting. Yeah, I'm looking through just the notes to see if Jayden had a bunch of drop passes in that game. What a game that was. Hell of a football game. This will be different, I do think. My notes, connection with Terry off all night. 7 targets, 1 catch. A.J. Terrell played really well against Terry. A.J. Terrell might be on the injury report. Check that. I think he's on the injury report for the Falcons this week. I think they're missing a corner this week potentially, and I think it's Terrell, who's a very good corner. That would be big. That could be huge. Look, if they trot out, a true skeleton crew wide receiver group, led by Debo, but not being the true receiver, more of an overall weapon. But you've then got no Noah Brown, no Terry. So you're out there with Chris Moore, who got the second most snaps last week, Luke McCaffrey, Jalen Lane, bringing up Ja'Cory Brooks from the practice squad. That's going to be a challenge for either quarterback. It's going to be one of those games where the backs are going to be a big part of everything they do, I would imagine. Could be a huge game for McNichols. What did you say?
A.J. Terrell, currently DNP with a hamstring injury, which we know a lot about corners with hamstring injuries, don't we, Kev?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, that's, I guess, in my notes from that game last year, A.J. Terrell, great job on Terry. Okay. We're going to talk some baseball with Mark Zuckerman coming up in about 12 minutes. I've got a what do you got or two when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. Don't forget you can watch us on our Team 980 YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button when you get there. So the SEC is unveiling, this is SEC football, every team's conference opponents for the next 4 football seasons. They are going to an expanded schedule, but they're going to 3 finalized annual protected rivalries per school. The SEC is loaded with rivalries. I mean, among the top 100 rivalries in college football, a list put together by the New York Times a few years ago, 27 of them were SEC matchups. 27, more than a quarter of them were SEC matchups. So the traditional annual protected rivalries list has come out, and it has really generated a lot of feedback and primarily negative feedback, starting with the fact that Alabama and LSU, they have been playing each other since 1964. And in 12 of the matchups over the period of time, at least one of the teams was ranked either number 1 or number 2. Alabama LSU has become a staple of early November in college football. LSU does not have Alabama as a protected rival. Alabama does not have LSU as a protected rival. Starting in 2027, that game won't be played every year. It'll be played some years, but it won't be played every year. That is very disappointing to college football fans, not just SEC fans. I went to an Alabama LSU game in Death Valley. It is easily top 2 or 3 all-time sporting events I've ever attended live. I've said this many times before. We got there 4 hours before kickoff. Kickoff was 6 p.m. local time, 7 p.m. Eastern time. We got there 2 o'clock local time, and it felt like we were 24 hours late for the party, which was incredible. Tennessee, Florida could not be preserved in an ongoing thing. God, do you remember the 90s in Tennessee, Florida, with Peyton Manning, with Spurrier, and all of the big Tennessee, Florida games over the years? That game is not being protected. These are not crossover rivals, protected rivals. Alabama and Georgia is not going to be protected. Look, we have not seen Alabama and Georgia play in the regular season a lot. We've seen them play for an SEC title and twice for the college football playoff title, but that's not a big deal. How about Tennessee, Georgia being lost? I mean, Tennessee, Georgia, that's the game of the year so far in college football. That seemed like an absolute given in, September, early October in college football. LSU, Florida has been a rivalry going back to 1971. That is going to end as well. It stinks for college football fans that we're going to see just some games that have been fixtures on the college football calendar go away. Alabama's 3 protected rivals are Auburn, obviously. They would never get rid of the Iron Bowl. Tennessee, and Alabama-Tennessee's been a great game. But Mississippi State is the 3rd team for Alabama. For LSU, it's Arkansas, and they've had something with Arkansas over the years since Arkansas, entered the SEC. Ole Miss, LSU Ole Miss has great history, and Texas A&M. So LSU not getting Florida or Alabama as a protected rival is really the biggest gripe, I think, coming from most SEC and college football fans. Florida has Georgia. Of course, we're going to get the, world's largest outdoor cocktail party every year in Jacksonville. Florida, Georgia. Florida also has South Carolina and Kentucky. There are all these SEC schools, just, the additions of Texas and Oklahoma, have made this now something that they've got to go to. This will be a schedule for geographic rivalries that will be looked at every 4 years, which means based on when this starts, this list will get revisited in the year 2030, but we are going to have an interruption of LSU, Alabama I mean, in college football over the last 20 years, no two teams have played bigger regular season games consistently year in and year out against each other like Alabama and LSU have. So enjoy it this year. We won't see it starting in 27. I think we'll still see it next year. And then 27, 28, 29, and 30, they will not play. I wanted to just mention one thing and play a piece of sound for you. Javon Kinlaw, what is this from yesterday?
So it was open locker room. Scott
Okay.
Abraham was talking to him, and it was just a media scrum. JP was there as well.
Yeah. So he talked about, feeding off Daron Payne very positively. And then he said about Bobby Wagner's recent game in which he had 2 sacks and multiple pressures. He said this.
What's it like? Obviously, Bobby is such a leader in the locker room, but when you see him get 2 sacks in a game, considering how much he's already done in football, like what is that like for the locker room?
The old head still can move. You know what I'm saying? Him and Barnes, man, it lets you know shit, I got to get me one too. But it's been awesome playing around those guys for sure.
Kinlaw, by the way, I've listened to him get interviewed multiple times. He is entertaining. Remember, he's from here. He's having a really good season. This on him being happy playing here in D.C.
You're a couple months into your time here in Washington. It seems like you're really enjoying yourself. Kind of explain your time here so far.
It's been amazing, man. God is the greatest. He allowed me to be here with this great group of men. And even y'all, man, y'all do your job to an exceptional level, man. And y'all are all great people, man. I'm super blessed to be able to be around all these great people for sure.
And how does that impact the way you play, like just of being happy here?
I can just go out and be free. I don't got to be tense. I ain't got to worry about too much. Just do my job,
Javon Kinlaw, this edition, which we debated back in the spring, was a very expensive edition. It has paid off so far. Now, again, the best defensive performances through 3 games were against the Giants and the Raiders. There will be a big test this Sunday, although the quarterback's a little shaky right now. So we'll see what that looks like, because if you can make them, I was going to say left-handed, but Michael Penix Jr. is actually left-handed. But if you can take away that run game and force Penix Jr. to beat you, maybe he's not in position to do that right now. But Washington is a better run defensive team than they were a year ago by a lot through 3 games. Per the normal statistics, they are 12th as a run defense right now. That is a massive difference from where they were last year. Overall, defensively through 3 games, Washington right now sitting per DVOA at 10th overall. That's impressive through 3 games. The opponents have something to do with that. They do. The one opponent that was capable shredded them a bit, especially through the air. But, man, I think the Kinlaw addition has allowed Payne to play at a high level and Dorrance Armstrong to play at a high level as well. Hopefully it continues this Sunday. The Nats are about to name a new president of baseball ops, and the baseball season has gotten ridiculous here over the last couple of weeks. Mark Zuckerman will join us next to discuss.
All right, happy Thursday, everybody. Here's what's happening. The Nats, they get the win 4-3 over the Atlanta Braves. Andrew Alvarez gets the start, but Mitch Parker comes away being credited with the win. Jose Ferrer comes in, earns the save. James Wood sets the bar pretty high after he reaches 30 home runs for the first time in his career. Nats are off tonight, but they will close out their season at home in a weekend series versus the Chicago White Sox tomorrow. Tonight, the Caps, they get going in a preseason matchup versus the Philadelphia Flyers. Puck drop at 7 p.m. That'll be right here on the Team 980. Charlie Lindgren slated to get the start. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. You can catch Denton's office throughout all football season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
According to reports, the Nats are on the verge of hiring a new president of baseball operations / GM. Unclear on that, but here to help us with that is our good friend from Masson Sports, Mark Zuckerman, at Mark Zuckerman on X on Twitter. He and our good friend Al Galdi host a Nats Chat podcast, which you can get anywhere you get your podcasts. So tell us about Paul Taboni from the Red Sox, 35-year-old, et cetera, and what his position will be, whether or not it's, GM and president of baseball operations both, or just one. Let's hear who the Nats just hired.
Yeah, first of all, I believe it's going to be president of baseball operations, and that he will then also have a GM working for him. Now, the thing to understand here, because we had decades with Mike Rizzo essentially holding both roles or both titles. The way baseball works now, a lot of places, is they've elevated to the top decision maker this title of president of baseball operations with a GM working below them. The GM in those cases is not really the guy in charge, the one making all the final decisions. It's just an elevated title and a sort of right-hand man to help, accomplish a lot of things. So Paul Taboni is going to be in charge of the Nationals from a baseball standpoint, whether he has somebody working underneath him or not. And it's a big move for a young guy, as you said, 35. Now, this is the way the sport's gone in a lot of cases. It's not unusual for someone that young. He's got a decade of experience. And I think what stands out about him, maybe versus some others, there are so many GMs and executives in baseball now with a straight up analytics financial background, not necessarily a straight baseball background. Guys like Mike DiBartolo, who worked in, like on Wall Street before going into baseball. In Taboni's case, he played baseball at Cal Berkeley, and he got his MBA from Notre Dame. So he has that side of it, the analytics side of it. But he also spent the last decade working his way all the way up the Red Sox scouting ladder. He started out just as an area scout, looking for the next high school star, and worked his way up all the way to becoming the guy who was in charge of their draft for 3 years, and then ultimately becoming an assistant GM who had a lot of responsibilities for them. So it's kind of that nice sweet spot of a combination of the traditional background and plenty of scouting background, while also being very well versed in analytics. And I'm interested to see how he incorporates those two things together. In a perfect world, that's what you want, somebody who has both sides of that equation.
Are you surprised that the Nats were able to attract somebody like this?
A little bit. And his name had come up, but the thought, at least coming out of Boston, was that he was in line to be promoted to the GM of the Red Sox, working underneath their top guy, who was considered the chief baseball officer or something like that. Yeah. And the thought would be, well, of course he's going to want to stay with the Red Sox. Now, maybe this is where making him president of baseball operations, really giving him the keys to the car, is what sold him on it. I'm really curious. One of the first things I want to ask him when he's officially introduced is, what did he learn from the Lerner family about this organization? I'm sure he's trying to sell himself to them, but I'm sure they're trying to sell themselves to him as well.
Don't they need in the sport?
100%. 100%. So I want to know, what did he hear from them that convinced him, yes, this is the place I wanted to go? Because presumably as an up-and-comer working for a very good organization in Boston, there were going to be other opportunities for him, whether there or somewhere else. So I want to know, why did this one really stand out to you and say, I need to take this job? I think his answer to that would be pretty fascinating.
Yeah, do you think, he probably wouldn't reveal this perhaps, but don't you think he needed some level of commitment, financial and otherwise, from the Lerners before taking this gig?
Yeah, I would think so, or at least a general idea of what they anticipate doing. Now,
I'm not talking about compensation for him. I'm talking about a commitment to player development, to free agents, to managers, etc. The Lerners have a rep here that, like you said, they probably had to sell themselves to him.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think what is important in his standpoint, you kind of mentioned there, it's not just how much you're going to spend on the major league payroll. It's how much money you're going to give me to build the infrastructure of the organization, to hire player development people, front office staffers, scouts, analysts, everything that we need to have an organization that I believe is going to be good enough to win and compete for championships. So that's all stuff that I would think if I'm in his position, I want to have some assurances and know what I'm getting into here. Do I think they told him, hey, we're going to have a top 5 budget in the majors? I'm going to guess probably not, but I would hope that whatever they did tell him was satisfactory enough to make him believe that they can be competitive here and that this isn't necessarily a Tampa Bay Rays or Pittsburgh Pirates kind of situation, because I think you would step into that a little more leery of what the future would hold.
Real quickly, for everybody that's not paying close attention to this, tell everybody what's coming down the road with respect to, a collective bargaining agreement and a potential for the first time ever salary cap in this sport.
Yeah, this is the underlying thing, not just for the Nationals, but across all of baseball. But it certainly fits in with a lot of what I think the learners are coping with right now and trying to figure out as they map things out the next few years. The CBA expires after next season at the end of 2026. And you're already hearing some pretty serious talk on both sides of the equation, players and owners, about lockouts, about the owners demanding a salary cap, something that they last really tried to do in 1994. How'd that work out? Well, they lost the World Series and they didn't even get their salary cap in the end. The union has always been adamantly opposed to that. Do they think they can pull it off this time? I don't know, perhaps, but they're certainly talking in those terms like they want to do that. So they're definitely gearing up for the potential of some kind of work stoppage in 27 or major changes, and who knows how long that takes. And then on top of that, there's a major issue for MLB with their media rights, their TV rights, that Rob Manfred is openly saying that he hopes to have all 30 teams essentially give up their local TV rights to the league so that it can be packaged as one huge sum to deal out to whoever might want it. And that comes up in 2028. So those are the underlying factors. And if you're the learners, the thought is, are they just biding their time until that's all settled and they're going to kind of stay with the low payroll and go in that direction now? Would you go all in now, or are they thinking, hey, if we're going to have a salary cap in a few years, that changes the whole financial dynamic of it? The TV situation we know is a huge deal for them. Whether they would sell the team someday may be tied into all of this. So it's a lot to consider beyond just, what they're looking to do in 2026.
How much does the value of, say, a Nationals, on the open market for sale, how much does it increase the value if there's a salary cap in the sport?
It could. The thought would be, I guess you would say, okay, they would have a better chance of being more competitive by not having to try to spend alongside the Yankees and the Mets and the Dodgers and that kind of thing. So it could. But in theory, that also raises the value of the Pirates and the Royals and the Reds and teams like that. So I think it really boils down to it. I've firmly believed that if the learners ultimately want to sell the team, but they're not going to do it until they get the price number that they want, which they obviously have not gotten yet. What's the best way to get there? To me, it's always been have a better team. Have a more successful franchise with more fans and all that kind of stuff. Now, maybe a salary cap helps them get there, but if they're just thinking that alone solves all the issues, I'm not sure that's 100% true, because you see in other sports with salary caps, there are still the bottom feeders who lose every year and are still not effective at winning, no matter what the salary balance may be.
Yeah, and I think the TV thing is also incredibly interesting as it relates to somebody like Ted Leonsis as a potential buyer, because obviously that would be for Monumental. But if baseball is controlling the TV part of it for, say, the Nats and many other teams, that's something we can talk about in the future. Anyway, there are other things I wanted to chat about with you. How would you sort of describe James Wood's season?
Roller coaster, although it was entirely going up for the first half and pretty much going down the second half until the last 2 days. Thankfully, he's hit 3 homers in the last 2 days, hasn't struck out, and so he may yet salvage this. It's probably the most dramatic one half to the other half I've ever seen from a player. He was so good in the first half, and we're talking about him being a 40-plus homer, iconic season like among the likes of Bryce Harper and Juan Soto when they were here. And that was legit. That's what he was headed for.
Mm-hmm.
And the second half, it fell apart. And until just these last couple of days, he only hit 3 home runs since the All-Star break and was striking out at an incredible rate, to the fact that he probably won't get there now, thanks to the last few days, but he was on pace to break the all-time single-season strikeout record in Major League Baseball of 223 by Mark Reynolds of the Diamondbacks.
He's 8 short of that right now. He's struck out more than anybody in the league this year.
Yeah. So, and it, it's one thing to say, oh, you strike out a lot, but you're still making great contact. No, that wasn't happening either. So a huge tail off. Now, I think everybody believes this guy is going to be really good for a really long time. And it was a strange second half with the firings. Maybe the home run derby screwed him up. Give him an off season to clear his mind, come back spring training with a new manager, new coaching staff, and he should be fine. But it was very discouraging to see that the drop off be that dramatic, and for it to take this long for him to start to get it back together again.
Talking to Mark Zuckerman from Masson, how good has the last few weeks been? I mean, I want to start with just Cleveland. They're on the verge. If they hold off the Tigers, and they now have a 1-game lead, they finally overcame the Tigers last night in the American League Central. They were 15.5 back on July 8th. They were 10.5 back on September 1st. This would be an all-time comeback since the divisions were a part of it in 1969. I mean, I know for us, football season starts and there's a big shift in attention, but tell everybody what Cleveland is about to accomplish.
Oh, you just outlined it. It's one of, if not the greatest comebacks ever. And you got to understand, they were not on anybody's radar at all. And Detroit was so far out in front that it was just assumed, oh, they're going to have the best record in the league. And what a great story this has become as a team who had a surprise run last year to make the playoffs. And all of a sudden, they're not assured of anything anymore. They're fighting whether for the division or it would actually be the final wild card. The way that's set up, it's now down to them in Houston for the last wild card. And if they miss out, that's a monumental collapse for a franchise that just never thought it was going to be in that position. So it's a huge deal. Caught everyone in the sport by surprise. Now, we knew Cleveland was good last year. They went to the ALCS before losing to the Yankees. They have talent, but the season was not going in that direction for them at all. And Detroit looked far and away the superior team. Cleveland's taken it to them in these last 2 games that they've been facing head-to-head. You know, I really would like to see Detroit still get in because I think they're a great story. They have Kyle Finnegan, the former Nats closer, in their bullpen. I would love to see them make a run as well, but you can't discount what the Guardians have done. And it's really, it has been a fascinating final week. We don't often get this where you've got multiple division races and wild card races that look like they're going to go right down to the final day.
I want to make sure I'm clear on this. If we get a bunch of ties, we now have tiebreakers in place to avoid multiple playoff games before the playoffs begin, correct?
Yeah, there's no more game 163. Unfortunately, I loved those when they would come up, that one extra game when it's all said and done.
Yeah.
That you got to go play and you have no time to prep for it. I loved it, but I understand why baseball did this with the 3-game wild card series now. Trying to pack that all in and get it done right around Halloween was too much. So it is tiebreakers. And that's why when you look at the standings, and they'll mention it on all these broadcasts that, like, you know, even if the Mets end up tied with the Reds, well, the Reds have the tiebreaker over them. So they have to finish ahead of them in order to get in. So there's a lot of that stuff. It's unfortunate. I love the old method, but I do understand why, you know, there just aren't enough days in the calendar for them to account for those tiebreaker games anymore.
So we've talked about the Cleveland overcoming Detroit. How about what Seattle's done in the American League West? By the way, Houston has not missed the postseason since 2016. They're on the verge of potentially missing the postseason this year unless they can have a big weekend and snag one of the wild cards. But just give me a minute on Cal Raleigh and the Mariners.
The Mariners have had a wonderful season. It's their first division title in 24 years since Ichiro was a rookie in 2001, and they won a record 116 games that year. Right. The whole city, the whole Northwest seems to have gotten 100% behind them. And the big reason is the big dumper himself, Cal Raleigh, who last night hit his 59th and 60th home runs. And I know the number 60 doesn't mean what it used to because it's become a little more common the last few decades. But what you got to understand with Cal Raleigh, he's done this as a catcher. And he's not like a part-time catcher. He is a full-time catcher and a good one, a switch hitting catcher. To hit 60 home runs with the physical demands of that position and to do it in a way that's carrying a team to a division title, maybe even the number 1 seed in the American League, depending on how it all shakes out. That's why he is a serious contender, if not the favorite, over Aaron Judge for the AL MVP. It's an iconic, memorable season for a guy who really embodies what that team has become.
Yeah, I mean, this probably is more me than maybe the majority of people that are listening, but there's no chance I could have identified Cal Raleigh at the beginning of the season in terms of what team he played on.
No, and there's a lot of people, I'm sure, people in baseball knew who he was, but he has not done anything to this extent. It's such a breakthrough season. It's really just become like this bigger than life situation that he's done. And also keep in mind, just from Seattle's standpoint, the Mariners' standpoint, they are the only franchise that's never been to the World Series now. The Nationals were the previous one when they got there in 2019 as the Expos and Nationals.
Well, they're the
Seattle's
favorite in the American League right now.
Yeah, and I think they deserve to be. It's wide open. There really isn't an obvious favorite this year in either league, I don't think. But if Seattle were to get there, there's a huge emotional component to that. A franchise that's existed since 1977 and is the only one left in the majors that has never reached the World Series.
So, of course, I'm going to reach out to you next week again for the playoffs. But right now, while I have you, because I'm looking at the odds, the Phillies are the current favorite to win the World Series. The Mariners are actually second, ahead of the Dodgers and the Yankees and the Brewers, who for much of the season looked like the best team in baseball. Is this the year that the Phillies get it done?
It could be, but I really don't feel like anybody is head and shoulders the favorites above anyone else. And in the Phillies case, their starting pitching has been dominant, and that means a lot, as we know, in the postseason.
But injuries.
Their bullpen, they've had injuries, and their bullpen is incredibly shaky. And we've also seen how big an impact that can make on teams come the postseason. So, I'm hesitant to label anyone as a favorite going into it. I think Milwaukee has had a fantastic season. Another team that you don't necessarily look at the names and they're not going to wow you, but 1 through 26 on their roster, they have contributors everywhere, and they have maintained a pace all year that a lot of teams have gone up and down all year. The Brewers have kind of maintained it throughout, which to me is a good sign of what they're capable of. But this is what, one of the great things and one of the hard things about baseball, you can watch the sport for 162 games and think you know who the best teams are.
Oh, yeah.
And all of a sudden you get into a short series, especially the 3-game wild card series, and God knows anything can happen. And a team that has a bad bullpen, well, all they need is 2 guys at the back end who step up at the right moment and can carry you. So I mean,
your team did it a few years ago, the Diamondbacks.
100%. Yeah.
So one other quick question while I have you on the phone, because I watched the Kershaw, final, the retirement announcement, his last start. He actually came in last night out of the bullpen. Is he a starter in a playoff series for the Dodgers, or is he in the bullpen?
I thought that was I was watching it too last night. I thought it was a very interesting decision. They're still trying to wrap up the West.
Yeah.
So there was.
They got a 2.5 game lead. They should get it done, right?
Yeah. They're in pretty good shape because they won that game in extra innings last night. I'm very fascinated. You talk about injuries. The Dodgers have had a ton of pitching injuries in particular. And yes, they're the Dodgers. They have more depth than anyone else and they can handle it. But it's very much up in the air how they're going to arrange their rotation, what Kershaw is going to be. He's not the same Kershaw from years ago. And they acknowledge that, and he acknowledges that, and he knows he's retiring at the end. They've used him in the bullpen in the playoffs before. It hasn't worked out. You may remember Game 5 in 2019, Soto and Rendon back to back. So there's a little bit of that shell
after
shock.
He had gotten out of the 6th, remember?
Yeah.
And the standing ovation and the shot of him in the dugout after he gave up the back-to-backs was just amazing from that series.
He was shell shocked. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So maybe there's a little bit in the back of their minds about that. The Dodgers they got to get in first, and they're just about in, but then they got to figure out how are they going about it. And that, to me, is a perfect example of this team that on paper, all the star power, they should be one of the favorites, but they've got to piece it all together, and maybe they will, and they'll go on this run, and at the end we'll say, well, clearly the Dodgers were best. Or maybe they're out in 3 games because they weren't able to get it all together. It would be a fairy tale story for Kershaw, but they've got plenty of question marks as much as anybody else going into it.
Thanks for doing this, as always. I'd love to talk to you next week, too, when we get all the matchups, but I will reach out then. Mark Zuckerman, everybody, talk to you soon. Enjoy the final weekend.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yep, at Mark Zuckerman on X on Twitter. All right, up next, we talk college football with our guy Denton Day. This is a phenomenal college football weekend. And by the way, it could start with a big upset opportunity tomorrow night. That's next.
Pick up your book bags. Grab your notebooks. It's time to go on campus with Denton.
Give me my theme music.
Week 5 of the college football season. It's one of those weeks. Maybe we'll look back on it as the best slew of games of the season. I mean, it highlights, there's more than one highlight game. Penn State, Oregon, Saturday night. Georgia, Bama, Saturday night. LSU, Mississippi, middle of the day. You got Ohio State venturing outside of Columbus for the first time to face undefeated Washington. A&M plays Auburn. Indiana goes to Iowa City. You got sleeper games like Friday night, Florida State, Virginia. The Hoos have played very well. TCU and Arizona State. This card is loaded. And here to talk about this weekend is our guy, Denton Day, host of College Football Overtime on Sirius XM, host of our Washington Commanders pre- and post-game shows on 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980. Listen starting at 10 a.m. on Sunday, and of course after the game as well. So these are the weekends we dream of. By the way, it's a crazy weekend because we've got Ryder Cup. I know you may not be into as much into that as I am. We've got incredible football in the NFL on Sunday, but we'll stick to college football talk. Give me the three in order that you're most excited to watch.
So I'm going to start Oregon, Penn State, just because you have Dan Lanning on one side, who, as you know, is one of my favorite coaches, but he has a little bit of a small issue of getting it done in big situations. He's burned us in the past.
Yep.
Against James Franklin, it was a massive issue getting it done in big situations. Then it's Ole Miss LSU followed by Bama Georgia. That Ole Miss LSU game, I'm licking my chops at this one, Kevin. I think it's going to ultimately end up being the best game of the weekend, but I'm really excited to see Oregon and Penn State.
Yeah. So let's start with Oregon and Penn State. In-state college Saturday night. Penn State, by the way, had a bye week. Penn State hasn't played anybody, but they have looked good in not playing anybody. Oregon last week, just destructive again. They have been incredibly impressive all year long. Maybe the game at Northwestern, a little ho-hum from a few weeks ago. Who do you like and why?
So I like Oregon in this one, at least by the points. Penn State's getting 3.5. I do think this one's going to be close. You say Penn State's been good while not playing anybody, and I agree with that. I would say that Oregon has been great while not playing anybody. Like, my biggest issue right now with Penn State is that they start really, really slow.
Penn State, by the way, is a 3.5 point favorite. I just want to make sure. You said they're getting 3.5.
Sorry. So I meant Oregon getting 3.5. I feel good about Oregon getting 3.5. Sorry.
Yeah.
But Penn State has started really slow against bad competition, and they don't have that luxury this weekend because, Oregon offensively with Dante Moore, he has performed at least the first couple of weeks of the season the way that I anticipated he would, which is he looks really, really good. It was really smart on his part to take a season where he got to be a backup and a really good program, get developed, and then make the changes that he was not making or was not afforded to him at UCLA. So he's been really, really good. I think Oregon has a really good opportunity to hang. The only thing that concerns me is whiteout games are just a little different. And Dante Moore has not played. Yeah, exactly. You've been to them. Like, there's very few games, Kevin, across college football that I think actually really sway results. Death Valley at night and a whiteout are the two probably top ones, and maybe going to Michigan or Ohio State for the first time. So I don't know how he's going to respond to the event that is a whiteout for Penn State. That's why I wouldn't feel super confident about just having them outright on the money. So I kind of like Penn State to win, but I think Oregon keeps it really, really close within that 3.5.
So for me, this game, I want to see what Penn State's defense looks like, and I want to see Oregon's offense, with the quarterback against a defense that's been impressive against very limited competition. I mean, they should have back-to-back shutouts, if not for that crazy play at the end of the Villanova game.
Yeah.
But to me, this game is about Drew Aller. Is he ready to take on an opponent like this in a big game and deliver points? Because I think Penn State's going to have to score. If Oregon's offense is great, but, runs up against the Penn State defense that can hold them down a little bit, still Penn State's going to have to get 24, 27, maybe 30 to win the game. Do you think Drew Aller's up to it?
No. Yes, but no. I think they're going to have to run the football Like if they're going to put it all on Drew Aller, which is kind of what they tried to do last year, I thought, against Ohio State, and he just looked completely out of sorts.
Yeah.
If they're going to put it all on him, they're in trouble. I think this is a game where you have to rely on Katron Allen and Nick Singleton if you're going to win, and then allow your defense. You said 24. 25 was like kind of my sweet spot, so we're kind of in the same ballpark there. If you can score 25 against Oregon and your defense can hold them, you're going to be in a really good spot. But if you're going to have Drew Aller be a guy that, even if he throws it like 35 times, I think you're in a lot of trouble. I think this needs to be a game where you run the ball, you have success running the football, and then you ask him to make a couple of big throws rather than a plethora of big throws.
All right, let's go to your number 2, because I actually agree with you. This is a very intriguing matchup because I'm not sure if Lane Kiffin's team is legit this year, although you got to give him credit because, as an example, they lost that game to Kentucky last year at home, by the way. It was a devastating loss. They could have lost to Arkansas, but they overcame that. They destroyed a team in which I think you would agree is a pretty good football team in Tulane last week. Meantime, LSU can't score. Forget about last week against Southeast Louisiana. They couldn't score against a very good defensive team in Florida, and Clemson as well. I don't know where the rub is. Does Ole Miss have the kind of firepower that they've had in the past? We'll find out against a good LSU defense. But what do you think happens with Garrett Nussmeier in this game? Is LSU able to score for the first time in a real game this year?
I do think they'll be able to score just because Ole Miss's defense is not, spectacular by any stretch. So I think there's enough talent there. But this is the first time in a really long time where it doesn't feel like LSU has a massive advantage at wide receiver. And that's their big issue with scoring. Because if you look at just the past couple of years, you have Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. If you go back further, you've had, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. And then even further than that, it's Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry. Like, they've been wide receiver U for a really long time. Them in Ohio State, they don't really have a game wrecker at that position right now. And I think you're seeing that, and they can't run the ball spectacular either. But that's one of the reasons why Garrett Nussmeier is having a lot of problems and why they're having a lot of problems scoring. And, the defense has looked really good. I've loved what I've seen from LSU's defense, but we're 4 games into the season, and if you kind of look back at who they played, they haven't exactly played a good offense.
No.
Florida's
Clemson
offense
stinks,
isn't good.
Florida can't score either.
We thought Clemson was, or at least I thought Clemson was going to be really, really good, and they're really, really bad. So defensively, it was good. They had good performances against those teams, but that's not what they're getting in Ole Miss. Ole Miss is playing the backup quarterback, who I think should be the starter moving forward, in Trinidad Chambliss, and I like him a lot. He joined me on Saturday, so I got to kind of talk to him a little bit. He's a great dude, but he plays without fear because he's coming from D2 to the SEC, which that story I don't think has been highlighted enough, and I think it will if they win. I mean, this guy literally was playing D2 football last year, and now he's starting in the SEC, but he provides Ole Miss with the element of a dual threat quarterback, which Austin Simmons, the guy who started for them at the beginning of the year, did not. And if you look at some of the teams that LSU has played, DJ Lagway is not a massive runner of the football, and Kate Klubnik really wasn't running the football tremendously in week number 1. So this is going to be a very new element against this LSU defense. I like Ole Miss. Ole Miss is a short favorite at most books, but I like Ole Miss in this one. I think it's going to be really high scoring, certainly more high scoring than we're accustomed to seeing this LSU defense, but I really like Ole Miss.
Alabama, Georgia was number 3 on your list. Georgia, so impressive in that win over Tennessee, coming back in that game. That was their last outing, and Bama's been better since the opener. So who do you like and why Saturday night in Athens?
I like Alabama. I'm taking Bama full blown on the upset here. I think Ty Simpson's been really good.
He has been good.
Florida State's a good team, and we're seeing that now. Florida State they're a good football team. I don't know that Alabama was ready in week number 1. I think they are much more prepared for what they're going to see from Georgia, and just understanding, hey, you're playing big boy football now. I kind of think they overlooked Florida State, and the way that they've been able to use the games in between Florida State and this matchup against Georgia to get Ty Simpson comfortable. I mean, Steve Sarkisian and Arch Manning should be taking notes. This is how you use these layup games. He's looked like a completely different quarterback the last 2 weeks. This is not going to be a blowout by any stretch of the imagination. Like, this is going to be a knockdown, drag-out fight, but I do like Alabama on this one.
So you mentioned Florida State. I think that's a sneaky game tomorrow night. Virginia can really move the football and can really score. They really should be 4-0. They lost to NC State. They blew a 10-point lead in that game. I think Virginia at home tomorrow night, Charlottesville will be packed. That place has the ability to be pretty good. I think this is a tricky spot and a sneaky, kind of line, under 7 worlds on Florida State. I give Virginia a shot to win this game outright. Do you?
Not to win it outright. I do like the quarterback Chandler Morris, but again, this is a very different team than some of the other teams that UVA has played. They're a lot better than NC State is, and I think defensively they're really, really fast. I don't think you can simulate. That's been the one thing about Florida State that's impressed me the most. It's not been the offense, but that defense is fast, man. And I don't know that you can simulate that in practice. They just have an element of speed that not everybody else does. I do like UVA to cover, so that line is it jumped out to me immediately. Well, and I'm also glad that we get ranked opponents on Friday night for someone that does a show on Friday too. It's a lot easier to do that than like an unranked Big 12 game. But I get to. I really like what Florida State is, but this game kind of being in between, the Miami matchup it does give UVA a little bit more of a chance, and that's kind of why I like them to cover the number. I think they'll at least keep it close, maybe a backdoor cover situation. I think they'll keep it close, but I've been really impressed with Florida State.
I follow this team every year because my oldest went there and I saw some games, but I think TCU and I think Sonny Dykes is doing a very good job. And this kid Hoover is a pretty good quarterback. They go to Arizona State tomorrow night. Another, really intriguing matchup. TCU's ranked 24th. Arizona State had that, one slip up. They had Mississippi State in trouble. Ended up blowing that game, but I think we're going to find out a lot about TCU tomorrow night. And I think if they get that win, there's a real opportunity for TCU to be a playoff team. Definitely, especially in the Big 12. But I was going to ask you specifically about this game. That line is, the flags are waving. Arizona State getting 3.5, laying 3.5 at home. I don't know that TCU's in a good spot there. I think Arizona State's good, though. I do think Arizona State's good. You're right about that Mississippi State game, and a part of it is because people don't really think Mississippi State is all that good. They're better than they've been in past years. Still not great. They just blew that one. They completely fumbled that one away. I do think the winner of this game is going to have a really good opportunity and probably in the driver's seat to join what is likely going to be Texas Tech in the Big 12 championship. Because Texas Tech is fantastic. As you know, they paid a ton of money to make sure that they would be really, really good this year. But I kind of like Arizona State in this one. I think on a Friday night, they are kind of weirdly good, it feels like, on Friday nights because they kind of are used to playing on Friday nights. So I kind of like Arizona State in this one. Couple of other kind of good football games. Ohio State at Washington. Is Washington capable here? They're 7.5-point dogs in Seattle. 3:30, Ohio State's first road game. What do you think about the chances of a close competitive game here are? I got this one at 8, and I'm on a Washington at 8. We have not really seen Ohio State since the Texas game play, any sort of good competition. But even if you look back at the Texas game, you beat a team where the quarterback had the yips. Yeah. And, Washington is certainly not talent-wise in the same category as Texas. But I do think you're traveling across the country, something that Ohio State, it's still very, very new for Ohio State to be traveling all the way out there for a West Coast game in September. So there could be a little bit of issues there. I think Washington is good enough to keep it to at least within a touchdown. So if you can get it at 7.5, that's the best you're going to get. I would take it. But because I bet on it early on a Wednesday, I got it at 8. If Washington, Ohio State, like you said, unimpressive when you look back on the Texas game. because of what we've seen with Texas and Arch Manning. But they were up 16-9 midway through the third quarter against Ohio. Why do I know that? I was on Ohio plus 30 in that game, and they ended up covering. Final score looked lopsided, but it was actually a very competitive game. You know, if Washington were to pull the upset, they would come to College Park next week 4-0 against the Terps, who are 4-0. Here's another game for you, and you know what side I'm on this one based on the number. Early Saturday, Notre Dame at Arkansas. They have been waiting in Fayetteville for this game forever to have Notre Dame here. Arkansas's lost 2 in a row, both heartbreakers, where they fumbled going in for the go-ahead score at the end of the game. I love Arkansas to win outright Saturday at noon. What do you think?
I am with you on Arkansas having a really good chance. I don't know that I'm not going to play them to win outright, I don't think, but I'm with you on them having a really good chance. I just don't really think that Notre Dame is all that good. I really like Marcus Freeman. I think CJ Carr is fine, but I just don't think that Notre Dame is all that spectacular. And this loss would completely eradicate them from the college football playoff. It would, ditch them from the rankings, and they would effectively be a non-factor for the next couple of weeks of the college football season. Yeah. I don't think you can. I think their back is very much against the wall, and I would hope that Marcus Freeman is preaching that a little bit. Sometimes coaches are really, really weird, and they don't want to preach negative stuff. I think you should be leaning into the fact that your back is against the wall, and Arkansas is in a really, really good spot, and they're fired up to play you. So I do think Notre Dame wins, but I'm with you that Arkansas is going to keep it close. I got them at 4.5, so I'm on that one. I just don't know that I'm confident enough, just based off of the way that their last 2 weeks have gone, to play them to win outright.
All right. For those that didn't see the news this week, the quarterback at Oklahoma, Mateer, broke his hand. He's going to be out for a few weeks. He was the Heisman Trophy front runner with Carson Beck at Miami. Devastating blow for an Oklahoma team that started 4-0. And I mean, Norman is excited about this team. That was a hell of a football game, by the way, last week against Auburn, because it was one of the only, decent games on the card last week. So can they withstand this? They've got Texas in 2 weeks. He's not going to play in that game, we don't think. He might be back after that. What happens to Oklahoma without Mateer?
If they can somehow squeeze a win out against Texas, and then maybe he comes back a little bit earlier than the projected timeline, because I think the projected timeline would have him coming back against, I think it's Ole Miss. It's either Tennessee or Ole Miss. If he can come back a little bit before then, I think they'll be fine. Defensively, they're good enough to have a quarterback that can do just enough. They get Kent State. Kent State's terrible. They're going to blow the doors off of Kent State next weekend. But if they can just do enough to force Arch Manning into a bunch of turnovers and to completely fluster him, which has not been difficult to do this year because as we know, he's been a little off. I think if they can get past Texas still unbeaten, they're going to be fine. If they lose to Texas and then you're forcing a quarterback that maybe isn't ready to come back a little too early, you kind of put a little bit of pressure, you start to press a little bit, then I think they're in a lot of trouble. Now, I've been of the belief this entire year, Kevin, that there is going to be an avenue for a 3-loss SEC team to get into the college football playoff. And I've always thought that Oklahoma was going to be that team because that schedule is just crazy after Kent State, but you need to have John Mateer healthy for that. And if he misses 4 games, I think they're in trouble.
All right, give me quick answers to these. For real or fake?
Okay.
USC.
Fake. But they're going to win this weekend big.
Ooh, they're 7-point favorites on the road at Illinois after Illinois got smoked. Vanderbilt.
Vanderbilt is for real. Crazy, but they're for real.
I think you're right about that. What about A&M?
Oh, God. A&M is fake. I love Marcel Reed.
Why do you say that?
I don't know that they'll be able to withstand the level of offense, or they'll be able to keep up the level of offense for the entire year. He's gonna eventually start to do a little bit too much, and they're gonna lose a couple of games.
You're talking about.
Yeah, Marcel Reed. They're gonna lose a couple of games that they shouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, I get the excitement with Reed. I get the playmaking ability. I don't think he sees it as a passer, and I think that's going to catch up with him. Indiana, to me, that was the most stunning result from last week. Now, I liked Indiana and laid the points with Indiana, but 63-10 in a matchup of 2 ranked teams, Does Signetti have another playoff team?
Yeah, this Mendoza kid is legit.
He's
I mean,
really
they are
good.
very real. Now, we will look at that win potentially differently if USC goes and hangs 60 on them
Sure.
as well. Like we'll look at it like, hey, maybe it's not as impressive, but this Mendoza kid can sling it. And who would have thought? Like, I know it's still early, but who would have thought in late September that the Heisman frontrunner is the quarterback at Indiana? What a wacky world we're living in 2025, but they are very much for real.
Is this guy Drinkwitz, the head coach at Missouri, a really good coach?
He is, and he's a really good relationship builder. Like people that cover the SEC
they're winning. No one's expecting much from them before we start these seasons. Now, they had a decent quarterback, and they obviously had Luther Burden there last year. I don't think any of this was expected so far this year.
No, I don't think so. But I think his personality kind of distracts from expectations because he's silly. He's goofy.
Silly.
He's like a little bit more likable than Brian Kelly, but he does like a lot of the goofy things that we made fun of Brian Kelly for doing on the recruiting trail. So he's kind of a dork, and I mean that in a nice way. And that almost, takes the expectations away from the team and puts it on him and kind of allows them to fly under the radar. I don't know if he does it on purpose, if it's one of those things that just happens naturally, but they really benefit from that.
All right, I got to run, but I was going to ask you about Matt Campbell and Iowa State, because if you look at their team and their schedule, they're going to be a factor in all of this as well in the Big 12. I know you said Texas Tech, and they look so explosive. But his teams are always overachievers. We'll talk over the weekend, and we'll talk on the air next week. Thanks.
All right, see ya.
Denton, everybody, at the Denton Day on X on Twitter. Don't forget, he and Linnell, Commanders pre and post game shows on the Team 980 and 106.7 The Fan. Charge next. Charge time. Paul Charchian, Fantasy Football Weekly, and Chop are his podcasts. Follow him at Paul Charchian. Of course, one of the best talking fantasy football. You know, I was just saying to Max in the break, this is a good game tonight. I think it's a little bit of an underrated good game. I mean, you've got an NFC West right now that really looks top to bottom much different than maybe we thought it would be at the beginning of the year. And I think we're going to find out a lot about Seattle tonight and whether or not they're going to be a legitimate playoff contender. What do you think?
Agree with everything you just said. There are a ton of great storylines that you would not have expected. Seattle and Arizona, which sounds about as anonymous as any game could be on a Thursday night, but there's a ton of great storylines here. And, you know, the NFC West has got, every team's got at least 2 wins, but I believe what's going to happen in this division, and it's going to start tonight, is Seattle's going to separate from the rest of the pack.
Wow.
And I think they're going to win this division based on what we've seen so far. This team has been better at almost everything than last year. And I believe there's some mirage to the 49ers who have played easy schedules. And God bless them for getting through all the injuries. But I think that we have just sort of a knee-jerk reaction to assuming San Francisco's, you know, going to be really good every year. And they're 3-0 right now. I just feel like the team that's played the best out of this division, and maybe by a margin, is Seattle so far.
Yeah, my only problem with that, I see where they are defensively, and I think that, and by the way, I think they're well coached defensively. You know this. You saw what happened to Sam Darnold when things got tight, and you know they pressured him in the big spots. I don't know if we can trust him.
Well, okay, totally fair. And we all thought the same thing. Here in Minnesota, you know, the Vikings had to make this big offseason decision. Do you let Sam Darnold walk without any compensation, might I add? Or do you keep him? And, you know, right now, Sam Darnold, Pro Football Focus's #1 graded passer. Everybody was worried about how he'd fare under pressure in Seattle with what had been a very bad offensive line. But they put a first-round pick, Gray Zabel, into their offensive line. Sam Darnold in 3 games has absorbed 3 sacks. That's it. And he's doing it with the 5th deepest passing. So it's not like Seattle's just giving him all dump-offs. This is not a Tua situation, Kevin. He's averaging almost 14 yards per pass attempt. So he's throwing downfield and he's doing it well. So I think I'm trying to not be a slave to my offseason narrative of Sam Darnold and what I expected to see happen, because it's not matching the play that we're seeing on the field right now.
I needed to look this up because I wasn't sure, but it explains it a little bit. Clint Kubiak's the offensive coordinator. So you're getting a lot of what he had in Minnesota last year with KOC.
Yes, Clint Kubiak has Vikings ties, and that does help.
Well, has Shanahan ties too.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct about that. He was with the Saints last year, and I just throw an asterisk on that for Clint Kubiak. He was going out there with Jake Haener, right?
Exactly.
So I think there was only so much he could do, and now and look, Sam Darnold looks really, really good. I'm just like I said, I'm trying not to be a slave to my offseason narratives and give him credit for how he's looked so far. And the Cardinals secondary, so far they've faced Spencer Rattler, Bryce Young, and Mac Jones. I think Sam Darnold is on a whole different level than those guys, and this is going to be a one-sided affair tonight. Yeah,
really interested to see the odds makers. I mean, the sharp money, they've pushed that line from Seattle +1.5 to Seattle -1.5 on the road. Now, James Conner's lost. I mean, that's not going to impact the line that much, but it's a big loss for Arizona. But just one last thing, and you're going to know this faster than I am. I know what happened in the Pittsburgh game when Caleb Johnson, their rookie from Iowa, didn't know the kickoff return rule, and Seattle recovered it. That was the game-changing play. And then didn't they have like 2 special teams scores on Sunday against the Saints?
Seattle, yes, they did. They had Torrey Horton became the. If I'm gonna get this slightly wrong. Torrey Horton had a kick return and a receiving touchdown in the same game and became, I believe, the fastest rookie to ever do both in one game.
He scored on a kickoff return. I know it. So the punt return was early. He had a kickoff return for a touchdown. Wow.
Maybe that's it. Yes, Torrey Horton, 2 different ways. Yeah, set an all-time record doing it. And that, by the way, he looks like he's a find as well. I believe a 4th round wide.
Actually, he did not. He did not. Let me just correct you, because he had the 95-yard punt return, and then a guy by the name of Derek Young had a 60-yard kickoff return, but it wasn't for a touchdown. But they got big special teams plays in the game. Yeah.
But didn't Horton also catch a touchdown pass in the game? Yes, he did. As a matter of fact, he did catch a touchdown pass.
Did.
Yeah. So I'm sticking with my story. That
it's fine.
Horton he caught a pass and he had the return touchdown, and Young, did it in his 3rd game, fastest ever to get both in a game, something like that. Yes.
Specific to fantasy tonight, what's going on with Marvin Harrison Jr.?
I'm benching him, and I don't have him in many leagues because after last year I was very gun shy, but. Here's what I'm going to give you a couple of things that are really, really troubling about Marvin Harrison. This first one specifically for fantasy players. When he does not, in 20 NFL games so far, when he does not score a touchdown, Marvin Harrison's average finish is wide receiver 65. And that is astoundingly bad. I mean, you are, you're in a really bad spot at that point. Here's what's going on with Marvin Harrison. First, he's had a problem with drops. He's had drops in consecutive games.
Exactly.
Second, he has the worst separation rate in the NFL. He has the lowest separation rate, 2 yards, dead last in the NFL. And this, by the way, this includes tight ends. So Marvin Harrison is getting worse separation than 250-pound tight ends out there. And then there's Kyler Murray, who misfires at him a lot. And we can't always know, is Harrison in the wrong spot, or is Murray, missing him a lot? But, regardless of whose fault it is, the ball's just not getting there. And then relative to tonight's game, Seattle's been a really good defense. I mean, last week, Chris Olave got targeted 14 times. He only managed 57 yards on 14 looks. So, I think we've gotten to a point where Marvin Harrison has lost all benefit of the doubt, because what we've seen in a now increasing 20-game sample size has been just dreadful.
I know Ricky Pearsall hasn't scored yet this year, but he was a 1st-round pick. Remember, it's one of the reasons they felt comfortable letting Debo go. And he's actually played well. Remember, he got had that incident in San Francisco. Got with
shot.
A would-be attacker. He looks the part, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah, he's looked really good. And they're using him, copiously because they're in such a spot, right? Ayuk's out. Juwan Jennings has missed most of the year, and so has, of course, their tight end George Kittle. So this whole passing offense has had to go through Pearsall, averaging 8 targets per game. And to his credit, the second-year kid has looked really good. He's running among the most routes in the NFL, and he's averaging 127 air yards per game. Wow. So, they're going deep to Pearsall. They like this kid, and to his credit, they've needed him, and he stepped up nicely. I've got him way up in my rankings this week. I think he's inside my top 10 at the wide receiver position.
Another, wide receiver in the game tonight, Smith-Njigba from Ohio State, another kind of later 1st-round pick from a few years ago. He is turning into a legit star, right?
Yep. Nobody's really talking about Njigba as one of the 10 best receivers. I don't know. He's not on the Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase level, but whatever that next tier is, Jackson Smith he's right there. He's number 2 in receiving yards behind Puka Nacua. He's the 5th most targeted receiver in the league, and it would probably be more, except they didn't even use him much last week because they'd crushed the Saints by halftime and that game was over. Cardinals tonight are going to be shorthanded without their starting cornerback, Will Johnson, who's got a groin injury, so they've got a 5th-round rookie in that spot. Jackson Smith-Njigba is sitting on potentially a fantastic game tonight. He is my number 2 receiver overall for this week. Number 3 receiver, and I love his prospect.
Who are your top 2?
My top 2 are Puka Nacua and Nico Collins as he goes up against Tennessee. So that's, and by the way, Pearsall, because you brought him up, he's my number 4 wide receiver this week. Times are changing. These guys are great.
Well, Nakua is really a legit, again, it's hard to put anybody in the Jefferson Chase class, but Nakua is different, man. He is definitely a borderline elite receiver. We're talking to Charge. By the way, just one comment on the NFC West Seattle pick. You talked more about the 49ers, and I think the biggest competitor actually is I think the Rams are the biggest competitor.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Rams are a legit NFC championship contender, as long as Stafford stays healthy.
Yeah, that's the big X factor, right? If they got to go to war with Jimmy Garoppolo, game over. And Stafford doesn't, to my eyes, now, there's no way to back this up metrically. To my eyes, he looks even more sort of stiff and upright than he has in previous years. I'm just, back injuries always worry me, and I'm nervous about one blindside sack, and Matthew Stafford's season is over. But at full health, the Rams are a very good defense that people don't talk enough about. Tier 2 defense.
Oh, yeah.
And, you've got Nakua, you've got Kyron Williams. Devontae Adams continues to look fantastic. I mean, really, Devontae Adams is going to the Hall of Fame. And he continues to play at an extraordinary level.
He's
Still
banged up,
really
though,
good.
I think, this week, right?
He is, but unless something changes, we do expect him to play this week for Devontae Adams. I think you can say I'm waiting around for Devontae Adams to for time to catch up to him. Hasn't happened yet.
Tell us what you think about our team, Mariota or Jayden against the Atlanta defense.
Yeah, I've started doing some work on this in this matchup, so I have put some time into it. Am I correct that Terry McLaurin is not going to go? I mean, guys,
I don't think Terry's going to be ready to go. Yeah, and Noah Brown likely could be out again. They could be really into kind of a skeleton crew receiver wise.
Yes, Luke McCaffrey got a bunch of extra time last week, and obviously that will continue, and he'll get pushed into a starter's role. And that's. You and I have talked about McCaffrey a few different times since his drafting. I've been relatively lukewarm on him, but it's last week he did score. I thought he looked okay. Yeah,
bit of a busted coverage, to be honest with you, but yeah,
I think that helps. Yeah, so is Chris Moore. I mean, your starting wide receivers might be Luke McCaffrey and Chris Moore.
In Debo, yes.
Yeah, and Debo, right, running out of the slot. Debo has the lowest air yards of any receiver. So air yards is,
but that's typical for him, isn't it?
It is, but okay, yes, it is. This is how San Francisco also used him. But this is always my gripe with Debo and that usage. If you never throw to him downfield, that means that whoever is on Debo, and oftentimes it's a strong safety. So for you guys to be Jeremy Reeves, perhaps, that guy can pinch up to the line of scrimmage. Now this means Debo Samuel has to make somebody miss. Now, he is a special back, and he can break tackles, a special receiver who can break tackles like a running back, but that's asking a lot of him when you're only throwing 4 yards downfield. So your quarterback's operating, say, out of the shotgun, and the ball's only going 4 yards. You're back to the line of scrimmage at that point, or even behind the line of scrimmage. I just think it's tough to be an effective, for sure, fantasy producer, but also just downfield,
Right.
I'd like to see Debo get used downfield more often.
Real quickly, flipping it around, I think Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, you could make the case along with Gibbs and Montgomery, the best backfield situation in the league. They got blown out against Carolina, which makes them, for me, the way I think about things, very dangerous on Sunday. But Washington's defense, we talked all last year, take any good running back against Washington's run defense, but it's improved so far. How do you see it?
Improved a ton. So for Bijan, he's at least 19. By the way, he has said it now both ways, Bijan and Bijan. So at one point
he likes Bijan, though.
He likes Bijan. So
you told us this a couple weeks ago.
He, in the preseason, he said, well, the real pronunciation of my name is Bijan. Right. But then in a Sunday night game, I don't know, some game, he said his name 3 different times. He said his own name, and he said Bijan. So I'm going Bijan now. So at least 19 opportunities in every game, which opportunities are rushes plus receptions. So he's very heavily used. But your run defense, get that third best run stuff win rate in the NFL. Your run defense ranks number 2 by Pro Football Focus. And your team, and John, who's an elite receiver, your team's allowed the 4th fewest running back receptions and the 4th fewest running back yards so far. So, for Bijan, who is a special back, and nobody will be surprised if he breaks off a 40-yard touchdown. So he's that good. But your run defense is almost as improved this year as your pass defense was last year. And if you take away Bijan from this offense, the Falcons' offense gets very, very mundane.
Yeah, I think the pass defense last year was a reflection in some ways of teams just lining it up and running it down Washington's throat. This year, I'm looking at DVOA right now. Washington's rush defense is 5th in the league. Take into consideration, they played the Giants without Andrew Thomas, a banged-up offensive line, and they played the Raiders, who have a horrendous offensive line, and were missing their best offensive lineman. So that could be a part of this early in the season. As we know, small sample sizes can be dangerous. But we'll see, because Algier and Bijan Robinson and that offensive line, they can run the football. They lined it up and ran it right down the Vikings' throat 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
I don't know why they didn't do it against Carolina. I think they just got behind because Penix was a mess.
Penix was a mess, and they kept turning the ball over, and that was enough there. Now, before we pivot away from this game completely, you always make me a little bit smarter on your running back rotation. It looks like Bill's going to play. He's got, I think it's a calf or something that they think he's going to play through, right?
I think so.
Where do you have this? Right now, this thing is a wreck from a fantasy standpoint. Last week they shared 1 total target. Bill and Chris Rodriguez tied in snaps. Rodriguez led in rushes. McNichols broke the long touchdown, but he only had 4 carries. And then Bill salvaged what would have been a horrific fantasy day with that late touchdown. I don't know what to do with this thing, and I am very interested in whether or not
I don't have an answer for you. I don't.
Okay.
I don't think any of us have an answer. I think every week's going to be different, Charch, and I think the game plan, like last week, they wanted to come out and they wanted to set the tone by being physical. The Raiders had the short rest. Washington had the long rest. Early 1:00 start for a West Coast team. They got a big kickoff return, and Rodriguez was the first back out there because he's a power back. They went 6 offensive linemen, and they ran it right into the end zone. I mean, Mariota scrambled on 3rd and goal from the 2 for a score. But this week, it could be Bill. It could be McNichols. They love McNichols. Like, I actually think there's a chance McNichols is part of the 1st and 10 rotation as he was last week. They love him so much that they kept him off special teams last week for the first time since he's been here, because they knew he was going to have a role. And he's definitely the 3rd down guy because he's their best pass pro running back. So, yeah, I think each week it could be different, so that makes it hard to answer. That's the answer, is that we don't know. It's going to be opponent dependent, I think, unless somebody gets a real hot hand, and then they may decide to roll with that guy a little bit more.
Yeah, I thought McNichols would be sitting on 5 targets last week, and the fact that he went untargeted has reshaped my thinking a little bit on McNichols, and I'm very interested to see if that continues. He's the only runner that can catch. They need somebody in that Eckler spot. It should be McNichols. It just wasn't that way.
By the way, don't
week.
forget Debo's it gets carries too. So it's a bit nuts. All right. Real quickly, Jackson Dart and the impact on the Giants offense will be what?
It's going to be a net positive by a lot. Potentially a lot. Russell Wilson, unlike Russell Wilson, Jackson Dart actually cares. He is a fierce competitor.
Russell Wilson's end of game Sunday night was truly despicable. I mean, if it wasn't Russell Wilson and his 14-year, I think Hall of Fame career, I would have thought we were in a point shaving situation given the point spread at the end of that game. The 4 throws that he had completely out of the end zone.
Yes, professionally embarrassing. And I think it does chisel away at his Hall of Fame resume. So let me ask you this. Russell Wilson, when we look back at his career, this is going to be his last season in the league. So 5 years from now, when he's Hall of Fame eligible, is he a first ballot Hall of Famer?
No.
Is he an eventual Hall of Famer, or do you think he never gets in?
No, I think he does get in. I've gone through his resume is super impressive. I mean, he truly was an elite quarterback for several years. He wasn't Brady, he wasn't, Peyton, but we talked about him in that next level, class. And I know that he's not going to go down as the most well-liked, quarterback for the organizations he's played for. But, a lot of guys have been in that category over the years. I think he is a Hall of Famer. Not Drew Brees is a first ballot Hall of Famer, this summer or next summer.
Yeah,
Russell Wilson, it'll take some time, but I think he'll get in. Why? What do you think?
I think you're exactly right. It's not. I think the way he has ended his career is ultimately hurt him, and whatever stat padding he has done has not helped him as much as ultimately his really, really bad play over the last couple of seasons has hurt the overall impression people are going to have. But when you're looking back, I think you're going to see the requisite stats. You're going to see the Super Bowl win and another win that he should have had 2 Super Bowl wins, and that was not. Well, he did throw the game losing.
It should have never been called.
It's on a play that should never have been called. One of the worst decisions in Super Bowl history, the play call. But yeah, I think eventual Hall of Famer. But back to Jackson Dart, just to let people know a little bit more about him. What we saw in the preseason was a high completion guy who threw a 78% completion rate, but it was a lot of short stuff. But in college at Ole Miss, he threw downfield all the time and is fearless throwing downfield. I just don't know if they're going to use him that way. But where Jackson Dart's going to be a special fantasy player is with his legs. He has got a big body. He embraces contact downfield. And Brian Dable, among the various reasons that he should be fired, if he doesn't give Dart copious designed runs every game, that is a fireable offense because Dart is a potentially special runner with the ball. And that's how you break open your fantasy scoring system is with quarterbacks who can run.
Great job. Talk next week. Enjoy the weekend.
Sounds great. Bye-bye, Kevin.
Paul Charchian, everybody. When we come back, Brian Diardo, CBSSports.com. We'll talk about the league and maybe a little Ryder Cup as well.
All right, happy Thursday, everybody. Here's what's happening in the world of DC sports. The Nats, they get the win last night over the Braves 4-3. Andrew Alvarez gets the start, but Mitch Parker comes away credited with the win. Jose Ferreira comes in and earns the save. James Wood sets the bar pretty high after he reaches 30 home runs for the first time in his career. The Nats are off tonight. They will close out their season at home in a weekend series versus the Chicago White Sox. Tonight, the Caps, they get going in a preseason matchup versus the Philadelphia Flyers from Giant Center in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Puck drop tonight at 7 p.m. That'll be right here on the Team 980. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1, and you can catch Denton's office throughout all of football season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
want to tell you real quickly about my good friends at Foley Mechanical. If you are having any HVAC system issues, call Foley Mechanical. We did. Dan Foley himself came out, dealt with us directly. He owns 100% of the company, not a franchise. It's not some big private equity firm. He controls the quality from the equipment to the people he hires, his team. They are professional. They are skilled. They are really smart. Foley Mechanical is full service, heating, air conditioning, hot water, and boilers, and they're the go-to for older homes with radiator heat, a real specialty. They work across the DMV, DC, Maryland, and Virginia, and they proudly install Amana HVAC equipment. If your HVAC system needs help, I promise you, you won't go wrong reaching out to Foley Mechanical. If you want it done it right, just call Dan Foley at Foley Mechanical or go to FoleyMechanical.com and tell Dan that I sent you. All right, joining me right now from CBSSports.com is Brian Diardo. We've had Brian on the show several times before. Love having him on, and he's actually written about the Ryder Cup. We'll get to the NFL talk. We'll get to our team and some of the big games this weekend. I'm assuming you're a golf guy. You wrote about the Ryder Cup this week. What's the best part of the Ryder Cup at Bethpage Black, in New York, on Long Island? What are you looking forward to the most?
Well, it's always good to be on with you. I am a golfer, a competent at best one, but I do try to play. And yeah, I'm fired up for the Ryder Cup. And you mentioned that it's on American soil. It's insane to me the advantage that plays in the Ryder Cup. I think the last time the U.S. won in Europe's soil was 1993. Yeah. And in recent years, Europe is the only team to win on the other team's soil as the visiting team. So for whatever reason, home field advantage is major in the Ryder Cup. But I think for me, obviously, the main headlines are, like Scotty Scheffler and Rory McIlroy, and then Rory's beef with DeChambeau and vice versa, which is it's super interesting. I think it stems from a lot of things, but I specifically remember the Masters where they were teamed up for the last day, and DeChambeau apparently was upset that Rory didn't want to talk to him.
Wouldn't talk to him.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to hear more about that when you get a second. But I think to me, what I'm more interested in is the role players, like Tommy Fleetwood, for example, against a Ludwig Aberg. And that's where I think the U.S., along with it being in New York on our soil, gives them the best chance to win. I just think they have the better role players. Like Fleetwood's had an amazing season. Russell Hensley, I think he won the Arnold Palmer invite in the spring. So I think the depth of the American team is the reason why I'll pick them to win this one. But yeah, it should be a really, really thrilling couple of days of golf.
Not that Whistling Straits and Hazeltine weren't great venues, but this may be the most raucous golf event we have ever seen. To play this at Bethpage Black, for those of you that don't know, first of all, it's a public course, an expensive public course, and you got to get there very early to get on it. But to have the New York crowd as part of this scene, I mean, it is going to be rowdy from the jump. Can't wait to see that part of it. You always get that in the Ryder Cup, but this may be on steroids this weekend.
No, that's an amazing point. I didn't know it was public, which, hey, we all know anybody that golfs, there's a difference between public and private. But I think, and you nailed it, though. I think for the Ryder Cup and for the environment that it brings out, the competition element that it brings out, I think being in New York on a public course really is going to bring that out. And so, for example, Tyrell Hatton, an emotional golfer. There's some emotional golfers that are going to be partaking in this. And no, I agree. I think it's going to be some great entertainment, not even just for the hardcore golf fan. I think for any fan of sports, it's something to watch.
Yeah. And of course, Ryder Cup always takes place during football and football weekends. And the college football slate's amazing on Saturday. And we got some pretty good games on Sunday as well. I want to start, though, with something that you wrote about, and we mentioned on the show earlier this week. Drew Brees, who, by the way, you agree, first ballot, right?
Oh, no doubt.
And he and Fitzgerald are locks to be in first ballot.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
he called the Eagles offense boring. I think a lot of people would call the Eagles boring offensively. Is it, and does it matter?
It's boring. Yeah. Does it matter? I don't think at this point, and it's going to take a team that's good enough, obviously, to stop them. Like, I think where you could be alarmed if you're an Eagles fan, and as Commanders fans, your listeners would know this. The deep ball, the over-the-top passes that Hurts was able to complete is what really, I think, put them, really got them going and springboarded them to that win over the Commanders in the NFC title game. Like, that is, they're devoid of that weapon this season for whatever reason, or for, I don't know how defenses are doing it. They're taking that element of the Eagles game away. They're forcing them to gain yards in chunks and to make their drives in chunks. And so the Eagles are doing that. They're accepting that, the challenge. They're doing it. They obviously are aided by the tush push, which I'm sure, NFL, I don't know if any of the 8 owners that voted to keep it are regretting their decision, or the 10 voters, I guess, that kept it in.
Have to be,
I don't
right?
see that. No, they have to be, and there's no way that play survives after the first couple of weeks.
Totally
of the season.
agree.
There's no way. But I think it matters when they finally face a team in the playoffs that can stop it. Yeah, and and I do think eventually they're gonna. You can't live all season not being able to stretch the ball down the field, and I don't understand how and why they're not getting it done. Like I said, I don't even care if teams are playing too high safety. That I think if once they get Saquon going, that's going to open up everything else. But that's the most surprising element of the Eagles offense to me, is that he has not been going. He has not been successful. But I think the biggest thing that surprises me, though, about Breeze's comments is I thought he'd give Hurts a little bit more credit. The monster numbers aren't there, but 7 touchdowns this season, 4 rushing, no interceptions, taking care of the ball, 71% completion percentage. I think Jalen Hurts deserves a lot more credit for him continuously playing well, despite the fact they don't have a running game and teams are taking away that deep threat.
Yeah, I think when you see what they did in the second half, you say, well, why can't you do that more often and not end up having all of these close games? Because they certainly have a roster that says they should win double-digit games, and they should win several of them by double digits, but they seem to not do that. But, you're right about Jalen Hurts. I think this is an issue with the way a lot of NFL fans view him, and it sounds like Drew Brees views him the same way. And yet, when he has to do the spectacular, he has shown that he's totally capable of doing it in the biggest moments.
That's exactly right. And I love his demeanor. He really is an old soul, and you hear that a lot. I got a friend that works on the Eagles beat. He tells me that all the time. And I love the mic that was picked up. I think it was Chris Jones when they beat the Chiefs was screaming over, "You guys didn't even get 100 passing yards." And Hurts, and I won't use all the words that he said since we're on the air, but he basically said, "Hey, calm down. We're going to win this game." And I really do love his demeanor. He really is all about winning. That's paramount to him. I know everybody likes to think that their favorite players believe that, but it's not the case, unfortunately, with all of them. But yeah, his priorities are in the right place. And like you said, he's very calm. The game has really slowed down for him. He always seems to make the right play. And yeah, I think he's outrageously underrated. And at this point in the season, for every NFL team, I mean, it's not going to be pretty. And I do think in today's NFL, where training camps are limited, the amount of practices they have, the amount of padded practices they have, right. I think the first month of the season is less about how good you look and more about the win-loss column and stacking wins while you're still learning the cohesiveness of your team.
Great point. A basketball coach in this town for the Wizards, Eddie Jordan, once used the phrase, "We're just harvesting our nuts right now." And it was because they were banged up. It was the middle of the season, and we're getting wins. We don't have to be good now, but when we get good, we have to be able to take advantage of it. And that's essentially what you're saying, and I totally agree with it. I will say this one thing about the Rams game on Sunday, the Eagles-Rams game. For people that hesitate on A.J. Brown whenever they do because he's not being targeted or he's not having the big numbers, it's kind of almost the same as the Jalen Hurts conversation, although I think A.J. Brown is truly an elite wide receiver, and he proved it in that second half against the Rams. It's interesting, though. He'll go games with 2 or 3 targets and a catch, But when the game's on the line, he proves himself to be maybe not in the Jefferson Chase category, Brian, but at the top of the next category.
Going to throw you a name that's really old, Lynn Swann. And
Yeah.
the reason why I mentioned Lynn Swann, there were games where he would have 1 or 2 catches, right? I think for his career, he only averaged like 2 catches a game or something, but would make the big timely catches that you need. And that, and obviously a lot of Swann's lack of targets was the era he played in. But the point is, again, the definition of a great receiver, to your point, even in the year 2025, where some guys get targeted 15 times a game, it's not all about that. It's about when your number's called, can you deliver, can you step up? And yeah, to your point, he's shown it time and time again. And again, like I said, obviously Saquon Barkley running for 2K last year was really the catalyst of that offense. Yeah. But what put them over the top was that Hurts deep pass to A.J. Brown. And I remember, again, watching that Commanders game, I go, if they can connect on those, this game could get out of hand. And that's what happened because of that element. But no, I'm with you 100%.
There was a blatant hold missed on that call on Barkley, by the way, on that play.
There was, as you should mention. You should mention that. Absolutely, there was. But no, I agree with you. And I think in today's game, we get so tied up in the stats, right? And like, I'll give you a quick comp. That's modern day. Jamar Chase. I'm in Ohio. So many people love Jamar Chase. He fumbles a lot. He doesn't have the greatest of hands, but his numbers are incredible. But for me, I'd rather have A.J. Brown because when the game's on the line, he's proven to be the more reliable guy.
Yeah, the Lynn Swann comp, they're stylistically, they were opposites. Swann was graceful, and A.J. Brown is a physically overpowering receiver, But and my God, if the rules had been different in the 70s, Lynn Swann would have more eggs in his head for starters, but would have had unbelievable numbers as part of that stalwart Swann Pittsburgh era. We're talking to Brian Diardo at Brian Diardo on X on Twitter. He covers the league for CBS Sports. So I've talked a little bit about this, and I want your opinion. The NFC is now 9-3 head up against the AFC. It is loaded. I thought there was a chance coming in that it was loaded in terms of the depth of it compared to the AFC. What do you make about the NFC? Last year, the 7 seed was 11-6. I know it's early, but do you see a similar kind of playoff format? 6 and 7 seeds needing, no less than 10 wins to even have a chance?
No, yeah. And as you were talking, I was thinking, what really is the common denominator with the NFC? Why do they seem to be the deeper and better conference than the AFC? I think it's as simple as coaching. There's better coaches in the NFC. Look at what Seattle's doing with their coaches. And I've been a big Kevin O'Connell fan for a long time. Dan Quinn's obviously proven to be a very good head coach as well. Dan Quinn with the Lions. I just think, Ben Johnson now getting his chance with Detroit or Chicago, even though they're not going to be, I don't think, relevant as far as making the playoffs.
Kyle LaFleur,
Oh, yeah. The coaching is just better. Yeah. And I think, again, in today's NFL, when practices are limited, when you've got all these injuries and you've got to have makeshift, you've got to have Mac Jones starting at quarterback for you. I think having the continuity of a good head coach and who puts together a good coaching staff is paramount. But no, I'm with you 100%. And so, like, I'll give you an example of this weekend. A game I'm excited to see is Minnesota-Pittsburgh, because I think, again, those are two probably, teams that you wouldn't say either are the front runner in either conference, but that's a good matchup for me to see, okay, which conference really is the better one? Because I think, and those are two good examples, two relatively evenly matched teams, both dealing with some injuries. Obviously, the Vikings have the quarterback injury, so that does give the Steelers somewhat of an edge. But again, though, I think as far as depth, talent on both sides of the conference or on either side of the conference, I think that's a good example of, all right, like, which conference really might have the best teams. I do think there's better quarterback play still in the NFC overall or AFC, but no, I think roster-wise, it is the NFC. And yeah, no, I think there's going to be potentially a 10-win team on the NFC side that does not make the playoffs.
Seattle was that team last year. They played at night against Arizona. I actually think it's a sneaky, really good game. I mean, I think we've seen Seattle, Arizona on Thursday night so much in recent years, and it's been like 6-3 or 12-10 or whatever. But I'm wondering if you think, which some people do, that Seattle might be for real.
Yeah, like, and I picked Arizona last week. I'm not picking them anymore. Like, they keep proving me wrong. But like, no, I mean, and I watched the Seattle-Pittsburgh game. They came in and stomped them. And Kenneth Walker, I think I slept on him because of his injuries the last couple of years. I was kind of out on him. But man, when that guy's healthy, he's a closer. Good. I mean, I'm not saying he's Marshawn Lynch or anything. And again, I know you love John Riggins just like I do. Man, when you've got a thoroughbred power running back that can close out games when you get the lead. And again, I was skeptical of all the moves Seattle made, like with Sam Darnold. Is this going to work out? But again, though, when you've got a thoroughbred like that with Walker, all you've got to do is get the lead. And you got a defense that's opportunistic, that forces turnovers, that puts pressure on the quarterback, that makes you one-dimensional because they take away running games. Like, yeah, I was loud wrong on Seattle, but I'm quickly going to grab the Kool-Aid that I should have drank in the summer. I'll drink it now. Because, yeah, I absolutely think they're for real. And I think now, as far as that division, I mean, how long can the Niners win with all the injuries they continuously have, with Bosa now being out for the year?
Devastating.
Yeah, it is, right. And when you look at Arizona, James Conner's now out for the year.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I think they're a legitimate factor in the NFC for sure.
I mean, I personally think the Rams, actually, given the health in San Francisco, have the best roster. The key is Stafford, staying healthy. In that division.
No, I agree too. Yeah, and also too, and this is where with like, again, any team that's got a quarterback with lack of mobility, I know the Rams did win with Stafford, over the a couple of years ago, but I think the league is more and more turning into like, you've got to have a mobile quarterback. It just creates so many mismatches for you. We saw look at Washington with Jayden Daniels. Like, obviously his passing last year was historic for a rookie and a huge reason why they got to the NFC title game, but you can't deny his running ability and how that creates so many more mismatches for an offense. And I do wonder with Stafford, along with just the health, like, when, again, Eagles, Rams, how many third downs can the Eagles convert just because they have that extra dimension with Jalen Hurts or the tush push? Like, the Steelers are scared to death to run a quarterback sneak because they've got a 41-year-old quarterback. Like, Tomlin denied that this week when he was asked about why they won't run sneaks. Well, that's why. We all know. So I do think with the Rams, like, there's just something about them that makes me hesitant to really pick them though as a legit contender as far as getting to the Super Bowl.
So I'll get to Washington and your thoughts on them and our team here in a moment. But you're a Pittsburgh guy, you're a Steelers guy, and I actually, before the season started and during the whole offseason, said if you watch the Jets last year, Aaron Rodgers was not the problem. They were a bad defensive team. Their kicker missed multiple kicks that would have won football games. And Aaron Rodgers throwing the football looked like Aaron Rodgers. I saw what Caleb, Johnson did in the kickoff in the Seattle game, which really was costly. Tell me what you've seen with Pittsburgh's offense through 3 games, and Rodgers in particular.
Yeah, that Johnson fumble brought me back to Barry Bananas Foster, 1990 against San Francisco. Google it, look it up.
I know the play you're talking about. Yeah.
Well, I know you do, but to your listeners, yeah, it was even crazier than the Caleb Johnson mistake.
Yeah.
But what I'm seeing is a team that, like a lot of teams, is still trying to figure it out on both sides of the ball. Like, I'm kind of surprised with – I thought Ramsey would have a much bigger impact, and I think his impact is still to be determined. I think maybe one of the issues is they're trying to move him around too much, and I think they thought that they would get
Ramsey
more –
you're talking about, just so everybody's clear.
Yes, that's correct, right. And I think a big issue is Deshaun Elliott getting hurt, who shares, he's the strong safety was supposed to, and Minkah Fitzpatrick's replacement, they still haven't found that. So I still think that's a huge issue for them. But I do think against the Patriots, they kind of found their calling card on defense, which is forcing turnovers, right? They had 5 in that game. And as you know, not every turnover is created equally. Like, some of that was obviously the Patriots making mistakes, but more so it was the Steelers forcing the turnovers, making good plays to jar the ball out. And so I think them looking for turnovers and Derek Harmon, their first-round pick, back at defensive tackle, those are huge advancements for them on defense. Offensively, the biggest issue, and you're right, like, Rodgers still has got that lightning-quick release. He still has that amazing – and I wonder when that will go away, because obviously his physical skills outside of that will diminish. He's getting older. He's not as mobile anymore, obviously. But he still has that release. And how many more years will he have that? I don't see that going away anytime relatively soon. The biggest issue for them is the running game. And a lot of people look at those tackles and say they're the issue. A lot of it, though, unfortunately for them, is interior with with Mason McCormick and Zach Frazier, 2 second-year guys that had really good rookie seasons, but it hasn't panned out so far. The biggest issue with Frazier is he gets pushed off the ball a lot. He's undersized and he doesn't have the quickness to get off the ball. He's a former wrestler, so he has the strength, but so far he's still getting pushed off the ball. So, like for this game, for example, they got to get that running game going. If they can't, that could be a huge issue against the Minnesota defense with Brian Flores that really likes to put pressure on the quarterback.
All right, we're talking to Brian Diardo from CBS Sports. So from, a league perspective, you cover the league. What does Washington look like to you through 3 games? They're clearly banged up. There's a chance Jayden could go Sunday. I would lean in the direction of probably not. I think Terry McLaurin's probably out Sunday. We'll know more this afternoon. But what do they look like to you through 3 weeks?
Well, first, I'm with you. If it's a 50-50, you don't play him right now. There's not a lot of reason to. It's so early in the season still. And against a team like Atlanta that's 1-2 and that they're firing assistant coaches, they're moving offensive coordinators from the booth, like they're desperate. I mean, Atlanta's desperate. And so, no, I wouldn't risk it at all. And the way Mariota played last week, like, no, you run him out again, you play him again. And if there's any question about Daniel's health, but regarding the entire team, this is kind of what I thought would be. It's going to be tougher sledding for them this season. They're not going to sneak up on anyone. There's a lot more tape out on Daniels. And then when you factor in the McLaurin holdout where he's not getting the practice with the guys in the summer, even though he's a veteran and he's no secret to that team. I just thought that there was a lot there that made you wonder how good they'd be this season. I still absolutely think they're a playoff team, but yeah, then they obviously lose Eckler. There's those things as well, which obviously nobody can account for that. But I think the biggest thing for me is that defense isn't doing more to help the offense. Like they don't have any interceptions yet. And that's a huge thing. You've got to be no takeaways, and that's a huge issue. I think for the offense though, the biggest thing is they've got to get better on third down. They're 21st on third down. They're not too many possession downs. They're not winning. But I do still, they're first in the league in rushing yards per carry, which is awesome, even without Eckler. So I think for Washington, it's leaning into that running game. I still think they're a super well-coached team. I still think they've got a lot of weapons on both sides of the ball. So I do think they'll be fine. But this is a big game for them on Sunday, for both teams. As I alluded to, Atlanta's desperate. They really are. Their passing game is anemic as well. And that's where I really do believe. I think Washington, even if Daniels doesn't play, with Mariota, I think they have the better quarterback in this game. I think Marcus Mariota is better than Michael Penix. He's more accurate. He knows how to run an offense better. Penix eventually could be a better pro, but right now I would take Mariota for sure.
I am curious because I'm a big Kirk Cousins guy from his time here. I think they're smart not to make the move. They drafted this guy. They put him in there 7 starts. I think Penix Jr.'s got a lot of talent, but we know how this league goes. If he has another terrible game, do you think Raheem pulls him next week or the week after if he doesn't get out of the funk that he's in?
The biggest issue with them is, they've got a coaching staff that's coaching for their livelihood in Atlanta with a quarterback that's not proven. I'd make the move sooner rather than later. And to your point, is that the right decision long term? Absolutely not. But that's the issue. That's the conflict when and that's the best part about what Washington had. Was
new coaching staff, new quarterback.
Yes, that's how you do it.
Yeah,
and
the Giants
I know that's easier
are in a bad spot.
They are. Yeah, their Giants are in a bad spot. The Atlanta's in a bad spot. But that's what you have to do. And marry the two together, be joined at the hip. There's no fear of losing jobs and job security. Honestly, Atlanta should do it this weekend, to be honest. Like this league should be as short as possible, especially when you've got Washington with the quarterback question marks. Like this is a game that you could steal from a team that's clearly better than you. But no, I think that I agree with you. I think if they lose this game, it's you got to do whatever you can to save the season. And if that means temporarily shelving Penix, then so be it.
Who's got a better chance of recovering off a loss Sunday, the Ravens or the Chiefs?
I think Baltimore. I think Baltimore is. The craziest thing about Baltimore is, well, I'm going to stay with Baltimore, but I think it's because of the talent of Lamar Jackson. But I will say, I think the Chiefs will win, but I think Baltimore, like, they've got an epidemic with turning the ball over. And like it, when I saw Derrick Henry fumble on Monday night, it looked like a guy that has a case of the yips. Like he doesn't understand why he's fumbling the ball. And to me, that's clearly alarming because this is a guy that has not had issues with turning the ball over forever. But all of a sudden, yeah, he can't hold on to the ball. And they continuously, and this is a several years issue, make mistakes at critical moments. They're the Greg Norman of the NFL. Like they just make mistakes when you think they've got the game in the bag. I think long term though, I like the Chiefs, like long term to pull themselves out of this and to get their season turned around because their defense is better. They just are. It's a better defense. They've got Xavier Worthy coming back. I've been very wishy-washy for the last minute or so. I'm going to change my opinion and go to the Chiefs.
Okay.
Just because I think I'm being very wishy-washy on the air with you, which makes for terrible radio. But I'm going to save it and go with the Chiefs because they have a better defense.
Yeah.
And they've got Xavier Worthy coming back. Their running game, though, is still terrible, which is why long-term they're not a threat either in the
I would say, let me just tell you, the reason I thought your answer was spot on the first go-around before you got wishy-washy and changed is the Ravens can be 1-3 and still be very much in their division race with Cincinnati, who we know without Burrow is not going to be there, and Pittsburgh's still a little bit iffy, whereas the Chargers, they're 3-0 with 3 division wins. So if the Chiefs are 1-3, that's a hill to climb. But we'll see. Give me just a fake or for real on the following teams. Indy.
Fake. As far as they might make the playoffs, but they're no threat of being a Super Bowl contender. Fake.
Chargers.
I'll say for real, but I still put them under Buffalo, absolutely. But they're real. I think they're for real.
What about Tampa?
For real, but like not a Super Bowl contender, like maybe NFC Championship game, closer than the other ones that you said. So I guess I'll say for real as well for them.
All right. The only reason I'm asking you about this team is because 2 weeks ago, when they crushed our team on Thursday Night Football, everybody said, best defense, maybe the best team in the league. And then they lost to actually maybe the best defensive team in Cleveland. But the Packers, and I'm talking about Super Bowl contention, fake or for real?
No, they're for real. I'm
think
still
so
with
too.
them. I think they just stubbed their toe. I think they overlooked the Browns and they appreciated obviously what Myles Garrett can do. Their receiving core is not good though. And they're suffering from the same epidemic a lot of teams are, which is rookie skill players have not really panned out yet so far this season. I mean, theirs hasn't. We mentioned Caleb Johnson earlier. There's other examples of that around the league. There's just no, right. And even defensively too. I mean, Atlanta's pass rushers that they got in the first couple picks combined 1.5 sacks so far this season. So it's not just offensively. I mean, so far this rookie class is not really impressed.
Except for the guy in Cleveland, Mason Graham, who's been outstanding. And that's one of the reasons their defense is really good. He's been phenomenal. But yeah, you're right for the most part about the other rookies. I always love having you on. Thanks for doing this. Enjoy the football and the golf this weekend.
You too. Thanks.
Yep. Brian Diardo, everybody from CBS Sports. All right. We'll do an NFL power rankings on Thursday here, heading into a football weekend when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com. we were just talking about Paul Thomas Anderson's new movie is out, the one with Leo, One Battle After Another. It's in movie theaters today. That's the kind of movie I think you want to see in the theater. Paul Thomas Anderson would certainly be in my top 5 of all-time movie directors. Yeah, There Will Be Blood, Boogie Nights, the list goes on and on. All right, top 5 NFL teams. This is not easy right now. I think 1 and 2 are easy, whatever order you want to have them in. I'll give you my number 5 through number 1, and then Max will give you his. So I've got the Packers at 2 and 1 still in my top 5. I saw what I saw 2 weeks ago tonight, and I can't get that out of my head. That is a talented football team, especially on defense. And it happens in the NFL, especially if you play a team on their home field and that team is dominant on one side of the ball, whichever side of the ball it is. Cleveland is a dominant defensive football team. And they forced Green Bay into a mistake. If Jordan Love doesn't throw the pick deep in his own territory late in the fourth quarter, the Packers are sitting here at 3-0. I've got the Packers. I just think they are one of the best 5 teams in the league. I've got them at 5. I've got the Lions at 4. That was impressive. Okay. Going into Baltimore and playing the way they did and winning the game the way they did in the trenches against Baltimore. I know there were injuries for Baltimore up front defensively. I get that, but they rushed for 224 yards. Jared Goff barely had the ball hit the ground. They dominated. The final score was 38-30. The Ravens scored late in that game. It was a great football game, don't get me wrong, but man, Detroit after week 1, head fake week 1, they're still really good on offense. I've got the Lions at 4. I've got the Rams at 3. They lost to the Eagles in a game in which they had a 19-point lead. They had a field goal lined up to win the game, and it was blocked on blocked field goal day last Sunday. I still think the Rams are a really good football team, and as they were building a 26-7 lead, I was thinking I might have the Rams number 1 in my power rankings this week. They are really, really good on defense. It's just that Jalen Hurts to A.J. Brown was just better at the end. I think we saw 2 of the best 3 teams in the NFL face off at the Link last Sunday. I've got the Rams at 3. I've got Philadelphia at 2. They're 3-0, and all they do is win, but 24-20 over the Cowboys. They couldn't light up that Cowboy defense like everybody else has. The Chiefs, barely hanging on, pushing their way to a 3-point win, down 19 to beat the Rams. So I've got them at 2, even though they are the defending champs. This is a new season. And number 1, I've got Buffalo. They were in a dogfight. Don't make no mistake about it with the Dolphins on Thursday Night Football. That was a good football game. That football game's 21-21 in the fourth quarter, 28-21 with the Dolphins driving late and then Tua threw the pick. I've got Buffalo, though, at number 1. That gives me 4 NFC teams in my top 5. I didn't put the Chargers in there. I didn't put Indy in there. Yeah, that's my top 5. Go ahead, Max. What's yours?
So I also have 4 NFC teams. They're a little bit different than yours. At number 5, I'm going to start with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah, you love Tampa.
I do love.
And they're 3-0 in all 3 games in the final
Mhm.
minute. They've won these games. Final 30 seconds.
Yeah, they've all been incredibly close, and it's kind of looking like kind of how the Commanders finished out games last year, just getting away by the skin of their teeth, and they got to the NFC Championship game. So who knows how far the Bucs can go with this type of luck. At number 4, I have the Detroit Lions. They showed out against a very injured Ravens team, but at the same time, it was a convincing physical win. Just bullying them in the trenches, really. So the Lions are at 4 for me. Packers at 3. Like you said, I can't deny what I saw on Thursday night against our team. The Browns defense is just elite of elite. Myles Garrett, nobody's stopping him. So yeah, Packers number 3, Eagles 2, The Chiefs' devil magic has transferred, and apparently it is to the team I detest the most, which means this might be a rough year for me.
What is the Chiefs' devil magic? I'm not familiar with that.
So last year, where the Chiefs were winning games that they weren't really supposed to, like remember when they played the Broncos and won on that last second field goal?
Had the block field goal, yeah.
Yeah, so they keep it's just transferred over. So from last year to this year, the Eagles ripped
does that
it right
mean the
off
Eagles
them.
are going to win 15 games and make it to the Super Bowl?
Maybe,
and
man.
Lose?
Maybe. I hoped if they do win 15 games, I'd pray to God they lose. But that's what the playoffs are for. We'll find out. Number one, unquestionable, Buffalo, Josh Allen. They with a cake schedule, cake division. I think that so far they're the team to beat right now. You can't argue against Buffalo for me.
Yeah, your Buccaneers, which you picked to get to the NFC Championship game and be the 1 seed, by the way, in the NFC playoffs this year, and they're 3-0. Their next 4 games: Eagles at home this week without Mike Evans.
Tough.
At Seattle without Mike Evans. 49ers at home, probably without Mike Evans. And then they might get Mike Evans back for at Detroit. I mean, those are their next 4 games. They also have the Bills on the schedule, the Rams on the schedule. They don't get anything easy until late in the year,
till December,
in division. But they've gotten off to a really good start, and we'll see. I mean, Baker Mayfield's been sensational.
A dog, man.
Do they get Chris Godwin back anytime soon?
I'm not sure on his timetable.
Because if Evans is out and Godwin's back, that's huge for them.
He's practicing right now. Chris Godwin and Tristan Wirfs nearing a return, according to Tampa Bay Buccaneers.com.
The Eagles are 3.5-point favorites at Raymond James Sunday. Another Sunday where we're in that 1 o'clock window. With all the primetime games we have this year, we've started off with 3 1 o'clockers in the first 4 games, and you got Eagles Bucks also in that 1 o'clock window. Good NFL Sunday too, starting with our first Sunday morning game this year, Vikings Steelers in Dublin. That would be fun to see a game there. 2 good fan bases for that too, the Steelers fan base in particular, because wasn't, I believe, ownership the ambassador to Ireland?
It sounds right to me. I believe I've heard that before.
I'm looking that up. Steelers, Ireland ambassadors. I'll have the answer for you when we come back. I do want to mention that all of our NFL conversation here on the show is brought to you by our good friends at Paramount. Can't count on much, but you can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus. Watch your local NFL game all season long, kicking off with the juicy Week 4 matchup between Washington and Atlanta. Visit ParamountPlus.com/NFL to get started today.
All right. Happy Wednesday, everybody. It is September 25th. It is Thursday, not Wednesday. Here's what's happening around the world of DC sports. The Nats, they win 4-3 over the Atlanta Braves last night. Andrew Alvarez earned the start, but Mitch Parker comes away being credited with the win. Jose Ferrer came in, earned the save. James Woods sets the bar pretty high after he reached 30 home runs for the first time in his MLB career. The Nats, they are off tonight. They will close out their season at home in a weekend series versus the Chicago White Sox tonight. The Caps get going in a preseason matchup versus the Philadelphia Flyers from Giant Center in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Charlie Lindgren slated to get the start. Puck drops at 7 p.m. That'll be right here on the Team 980. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. You can catch Denton's office during all football season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
from Gen Z. Love, Kevin, that you love Paul Thomas Anderson movies. His best is The Master. Looking forward to seeing the new one, but The Master tops the list. The Master was great. I think There Will Be Blood would be my number one of Paul Thomas Anderson movies. The Master was awesome. Joaquin Phoenix and Amy Adams and what's his face, who passed away. This is happening more and more to me. Philip Seymour Hoffman. Yeah, great movie. There Will Be Blood is one of Daniel Day-Lewis's best. That was such a great movie, and that's another one of those where whenever it's on, it's hard to get off it. I am looking forward to this, though. I've heard good things about it. We'll see. It's out in theaters today. One battle after another. Leo's in it. Sean Penn's in it. Who else? Let me pull up the list. Benicio del Toro's in it. That's not a bad start to this flick. This is a highly anticipated movie debut. So I don't know if I'll see it in the theaters. I talk a big game when it comes to going to the movie theater to see a movie, but I feel like I never actually fulfill that desire. It's just hard. When are you going to do it? Especially during football season. But it's a rainy day. There are late afternoon showings for anybody that has that flexibility in their schedule. I don't really have that much flexibility. I got to do a podcast, although we did it this morning. So that's good too. All right. All right. We have some Joe Witt sound to play for you. So Joe Witt Jr. and Cliff Kingsbury on Coordinator Day are talking. But before I get to that, I wanted to read to you what defensive coordinator Jeff Ulbrich in Atlanta said about Cliff Kingsbury's offense. I saw Nikki tweeted this out, and I thought it was interesting and worth reading. This is Falcons defensive coordinator Jeff Ulbrich. Remember, he was briefly the Jets head coach when they had an opening and was the temporary coach there for a while, interim coach there for a while. He said about Cliff Kingsbury's offense, so it's a really unique game because it's just that the offense is so voluminous. That's a good word, that there's so much stuff. There's so many variations of zone read and bypass zone read. There's a million different counter offensive tackle gap schemes and a lot of pass game to go with it. So preparing for all this stuff can get a little overwhelming. But the beauty of it is that there is an element of once you're through the first quarter, you've got a decent idea about how they're attacking you. It's just trying to compartmentalize that information and just understand how we're being attacked today, and then you have to adjust accordingly. It's an interesting quote because I think it says he gives you so much to prepare for, and that makes it so hard. But he also says once you've figured it out, it's what they're going to do. So you just adjust to what they're going to do. There was a follow-up question that was asked. The question was on whether the voluminous offense of Washington is more of the breadth of different things that they can throw at you or the variety of the few things they throw at you, but looks different every season. And he just said, look, it's really both because they've got a drop back game that's nasty. They've got a quick game. They've got RPOs. They've got obviously a run game that's they have every run known to man. They run them at a high level. They've got a good mindset about them. You can tell it's not just about X's and O's. There's a real style of play to their offense. There's a real physicality, toughness, finish. I mean, they're a difficult offense to contain. In the last, 18 months, nobody's held them for less than 18 points. And that's saying something in this league. They've had tremendous success, and we're going to have to play our best ball to contain them. All right. This was Joe Witt just moments ago on putting quarterbacks in no-win situations.
Doing good. How you doing?
Doing good. One play that really stood out, one of the Bobby Wagner sacks against the Raiders. It was a situation where Geno basically was left in a situation by the defense to take the sack or potentially gift wrap an interception to Jalen Holmes. I know that's probably one of the plays.
Is the one that he came free or the one that he had him and he went down?
Bobby came free on that one. It was very quick.
Okay. Yeah, I'm with you.
to put a quarterback in a situation like that, obviously without the schematics of it, but like, what does it take from your unit to put a quarterback in a situation where literally there's no victory there?
Well, the thing, it starts with stopping the run. So once we knew that we could get them in known pass situations, okay, we were going to force them to make a decision on who they're going to put the back on, and on that play you're talking about, the back was supposed to block Bobby. He ran out and he aborted it, so we were free. So now to your point, that's a rookie running back. He made a mistake there, and so if we can stop the run and play the run, now we're putting them in known passing situations. Now we can sort of dictate on who the back is. He going to block Bobby? Is he going to block Uzi? Is he going to be on one of those big guys? They don't necessarily want to do that. So, but we have to stop the run, and that's the most important thing, stopping the run to get into the known pass situations.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. That's the first time I've heard that, but they are doing such a much better job this year of stopping the run. That was the biggest concern I had coming into the year. Their rushing DVOA is 5th in the league, behind Cleveland, Tampa, Seattle, and Detroit. Now, again, some of that is opponent, dependent. Like they got the Giants, who had a bad offensive line that day with no Andrew Thomas. They had a Raiders team that had a bad offensive line without their best starting guard in the lineup. I think they did a decent job up front against Green Bay. They got torched more through the air. There was some pass rush pressure in that game. There was, they didn't get, shredded in the run game. It's improved because Kinlaw and Payne side by side are, they're a legitimate force against the run. And I think Dorrance Armstrong is thriving because of that. He was thriving at the end of last year. Dorrance Armstrong had a great postseason, great end of last year. He is really coming into his own. They're good. Or let me just say, they're better, a lot better up front, it would appear, through 3 games. They get tested Sunday, though. Atlanta has an O-line, and they can run the football. And after not running it and getting away from some of their 12 personnel and running it a lot against the Panthers, they're going to test Washington. Bijan Robinson is going to get opportunities early in that game, I would think, because you don't want Penix to come out throwing the football to set up the run. But if they can stop the run, they got a really good chance against Penix with the way he's playing. All right, back tomorrow to preview the whole thing. Chris Russell's next.